Okay, now we'll call to order the meeting of the City Council for June 4th. Welcome, everybody. There are 5 public hearings. I presume that it's one of them there may have some comments at least, but prior to getting these public hearings, now let's just name the public hearing. The first one will be the rezone on the south end of Highland Drive. And then the second public hearing is on proposed budget amendments. And then the third public hearing is proposed fiscal budget for the coming year. And then we have a public hearing on the city compensation schedule and then on the consolidated fee schedule. So those are the 5 public hearings. But before we get to any of those public hearings, now, if you have anything to say about any of those particular items, hold until we open that public hearing and make your comments during the appropriate public hearing part of the meeting. But if there anything else under the sun you've come to speak to the council about, other than those topics on the public hearing, public comment is now open for any of those other topics other than the 5 I've listed. Are there any who would like to address the council on anything else under the sun? Please step to the podium with your name and address, and feel free to take up to 3 minutes if you like. There might be a button at the base.
I think I got it. All right. Apologize for being late. I was at the wrong city council building. Mayor Fotheringham, council members, thank you for the courtesy of a few minutes tonight. My name is Kent Davis. I reside in Cottonwood Heights with my wife, Katie, and my 2 children. I am the Republican nominee for Salt Lake County District Attorney, and tonight I'm here to listen. A short word on why I'm qualified to do that. I spent the last 2 decades leading teams in difficult environments. I did 2 deployments to Iraq, was an infantry officer, got my Ranger tab, a Bronze Star, and came home to continue my public service. My first job after law school was clerking for a federal judge. I went from there to the United States Department of Justice before coming here and serving as a deputy district attorney in Salt Lake County. I tried felonies. I built the office's first cybercrime prosecution unit. And today I lead cybersecurity and am corporate counsel for Woodbury Corporation. I serve on 2 Utah Supreme Court advisory committees, including the Rules for Professional Conduct. And I share that not as a resume, but to make a point. Leadership, as everyone here is particularly acutely well aware, is showing up where the work is being done and listening to those who are doing it. Over the last few weeks, I've been visiting city councils across the county: Harriman, West Jordan, Taylorsville, Sandy, tonight, Holladay, because the DA is a county-wide race, and its work touches every one of those rooms. And that's why I'm here tonight. That's what I want to keep doing, regardless of whether or not I win in November. And here's my commitment to Holladay. The DA's office, as I said, is a county-wide race, but its work lives in your city. When officers refer a case, the outcome lands here in Holladay. When a domestic violence victim calls 911, what happens next is partly on the district attorney's office. Holladay should not have to wait until a press conference to know what the DA's office is doing about break-ins or car prowls in your neighborhoods, fentanyl, meth, and stolen cars moving up and down the Wasatch Corridor, and the repeat offenders who drive most of it. So I'd like to open a direct line. Now, I know that Holladay is served by Unified Police, and I'd welcome the opportunity to sit down with your precinct chief, sit down with any council member who has any questions. I'd happily attend a town hall if you'd be willing to have me. Answer any questions you bring. Tell me what it is that Holladay needs from its next district attorney. I'm taking it seriously. I'm an easy guy to find. I welcome you to do so. Mayor, council members, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else for public comment? Oh, yes, sir. Trudy. Hello.
Trudy from the library. Wanted to thank the community for coming out to our summer reading kickoff party. We had around 350 people come, so that was a pretty good turnout. And I checked this morning, and this morning we had over 800 people who've signed up. We really encourage everybody else to come sign up for summer reading. You can get a free book and a fine waiver and all the fun stuff. And you have till the end of July to get it done. So please come in and sign up for summer reading. The other thing that's going on all month long at the library is duck spotting. We have 10 small costumed rubber ducks that are very well hidden. It is a scavenger hunt for all ages. And we encourage people to come and join that, find the ducks and join the drawing. Other things for all ages this month at the library, we've got a tree party tomorrow. It's the first anniversary of the planting of Artie, our moon tree. Since he's an astronaut, we're celebrating. You can come help fill out things for the time capsule, or you can make a pocket galaxy. I don't know what that is, but it's going to be cool. Um, and that's from 10 to 3. You can come in anytime tomorrow. We're also having a summer wellness series. So there'll be one a month, and it's geared towards mental health and creativity and how those intersect. This month will be on the 11th at 6 p.m., and then we'll be doing some Zentangle. And the other all ages is pencil pouches for Pride on the 18th from 3 to 6. You can come in anytime and make yourself a pencil pouch. And there are all kinds of goodies that go inside, and that is for anyone of any age. Also, for the kiddos, on the 17th, we're going to have a paleo adventure because the summer reading theme is Unearth a Story. So lots of dinosaur themed stuff. So we're having a paleo adventure that's a lot of crafts and a lot of fun at 2 o'clock on the 17th. And that's what's going on at the library this month. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I'm making a note of the dinosaur thing. I've got a 3-year-old grandson. Okay, thank you. Anyone else for public comment for anything under the sun other than the public hearing items? Okay, saying none, we'll close public comment and proceed to item number 3, which is our first public hearing. The first one regarding the rezone at the south end of Highland Drive. And I imagine our first should be our applicant. Assuming our applicant's here, yeah, it's Kershaw. So why don't you come up and give us your outline of your objectives, and then we'll open public comment to the rest.
Sure. I want to say thank you for your time tonight, and thank you. Holladay City has been very open and collaborative with this process. Jared Bunch has been helpful. John and Carrie have been very helpful, and several of you have been very helpful in working on this. I have the 3 properties, 4, excuse me, right there for sale, or excuse me, for purchase. I own the front 3 now, and we'll be closing on the back parcel before the 19th. So this land right there is a combination of R1 and R2 zone. Formerly in the history, when it was the county land, it was zoned RM, R2. I'm trying to get it to RM zone. With the RM zone, this allows for similar heights to R1 and R2. And so there would be no height variance from what the current zone is, but allows for a little greater density. I am interested in doing a little more high-end project here. And a little history on me. I'm not from Holladay City, but about 22 years ago, I drove through here and saw the trees and found the city and fell in love with it. I have now lived here for 20 years. I built a small house on Cotman Lane amongst all the big houses. And I own a brokerage, and I've done developments in Holladay. I went through this process similarly with the office building that I own on 53rd South and Highland Drive, which required a rezone to neighborhood commercial. John Tierlink was very helpful in that process, and so are many of you to get that done. As with that, there was some public pushback, but I'm proud of what I've built there, and we have a building there that's filled with Holladay business owners and Holladay residences, and I think it was something that added to the community, and that's what we're trying to do here. So basically, we would effectively tear down the 4 homes that are there. We're looking to change this to an RM zone, which would allow up to 20 units. I think that there's an opportunity here for a higher quality townhome project in Holladay. If you see a lot of the townhome projects, they are 3-story, they're much higher density. Typical density is 22 to 25 units per acre. This is much lower density, 18 units for an acre and a quarter is what I'd be looking to do here. You see a lot of these townhomes that are 2-car garage on the main, you go up to a kitchen and some living area, and you go up to a 3rd level for your living space. And so with this, you could technically, under the RM zone, put 20 units here. I'm looking to do 18 units because I believe that you can have some main level living on these units, and you can then have some private yards, which most of the 3-story townhome units do not have. They don't have private yards. So I'm interested with a little less density, a little better project, and something that would be a little bit more conducive to Holladay. And so we would do a more traditional design on what's there and something that fits in with the Holladay Village feel. A unique opportunity here, and part of the reason this came about was that After meeting with Jared Bunch, trying to determine where the best access road would be on this for this project, he mentioned that the only reason that small one-lane road of Highland Drive is there is because it provides access to those 3 homes that front onto Highland Drive. And the project that I'm proposing would relocate the access to 6060 South, the south boundary street, and then we would vacate the access onto Highland Drive, which then provides an opportunity for restructuring that intersection. And I've spoken with many of you. I think there's public and private sentiment for people to do something better there with the traffic. And if we can eliminate that, not my job, your job, that one lane luge run of road there, and then redo something with the park, that small island, and make it more of a park, like some of the drawings that I've put in there, then I think it can create a more dramatic entrance to the city. You can put up some better signage. One of the original founders of Holladay City, of course, was John Holladay, but one of the other guys' name was Robert Covington. And so these townhomes we would name Covington Park Townhomes, and kind of an homage to one of the original founders of Holladay City, and also to put a little pressure on you as the city to make it next to a park if it's going to be called Covington Park Townhomes. And I just think we can do something really spectacular there. Also, by doing that, there are massive trees there, and they're beautiful, and they're very unkept. And I got a call from Rob Jones, who was in the furthest north house, that this last windstorm, one of the branches fell on the sidewalk. There are a ton of deadfall branches and issues with those trees. I immediately went over with the chainsaw, cleaned it up, and trimmed up some of the other trees. But if we put a park there, I can maintain those large trees as a presence to Holladay City with the large trees, and make a more beautiful entrance. And I've spoken with several of the arborists who would be associated with this project, and I think we can save and maintain almost all the trees on the perimeter, clean them up, get rid of a bunch of the deadfall, and make it a better project. Affordability wise, these will land in the $800,000 to $900,000 range, which for people outside of Holladay, that does not seem affordable, but in Holladay, that's very affordable. And I think it's a project that will. There are ways you can do mass production projects and make them cheaper, and I see a lot of that around in Holladay as well. But I'm less concerned with making a larger profit than I am concerned with doing something that is conducive to the Holladay Village feel and making it a project there that's right. And there's a picture of kind of what the park may look like in that intersection. There's already a lane there that's a turn lane, so nobody would have to merge going around that. They would have their own lanes. You could put a yield or a stop sign there and really slow down traffic. I think for the subdivision to the north of this, they have major ingress and egress problems. You've probably heard of that continually. This has an opportunity to provide an opportunity to solve that problem, because we can eliminate one of the lanes. We can get them out further. They're across 2 lanes to go south instead of 3, and it would slow down the traffic dramatically. And so I'm a huge advocate, obviously selfishly, because it would put a park in front of the project instead of a Highland Drive lane that people go down 50 miles an hour, but also because it's better for the neighbors. And I live here. My kids go to school here. I have an office building here. I'm interested in doing something that makes Holladay and the surrounding neighborhood better. And so to the east of this project are 2 townhomes. Bill is the most adjacent to it, and he and I have talked, and this is going to add value to his property as well, because we'll clean up on the trees on the east boundary of my property, which border his property. And then I'm going to, on my dollar, pay for a nice new fence that will clean up the property and make it better. He has issues also with those trees. With every time there's a windstorm, there's trees, branches falling down, and issues. So I'm excited about it. We've already closed on the front 3 properties, so the opportunity is there to vacate the Highland Drive. We'll close on the other one soon, and I'm happy to answer any questions anybody might have about it.
Thanks so much for coming in and sharing this with us today. I know we're going to get into this more later, that there are a lot of neighbors that have concerns about the effect that this property will have on traffic. But it sounds like what you're saying is that with this idea of this park, that you're willing to work with the Planning Commission to address those issues. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
It's always a concern with traffic,
Yeah.
right? Highland Drive is a massive road. This will slow down traffic if you do this that's being proposed. If you did not, it's still the amount of traffic that this 18 unit townhome project will drop onto Highland Drive is minuscule compared to what the traffic already is on there. There's plenty of bandwidth to handle that, right? And the thing you have about this that's different than residential development than a commercial development is people are not coming and going all the time. You'll have once or twice a day someone's coming and going back and forth to work or something. It's just not going to pose a huge traffic issue there.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, so let's open the public hearing then.
Do we want staff to review their staff report?
Oh, is there do we have Carrie come up and address them? Thanks for that reminder.
I think Casey did a great job explaining some of the motivations and reasons behind the rezone and kind of what the rezone enables in terms of development of the project. I just wanted to touch on a couple of the technical factors. Casey mentioned that this would allow up to 20 units depending on site constraints. Good design that he was talking about that it may not be up to that maximum amount, but that is what the zone would allow. In regards to height between the R2 zone and the RM zone, they do have the same height allowances at 35 feet, so there's not a difference in height between those two zones. Staff recommendation on this is an approval. There was some discussion in Planning Commission about keeping the rear parcel that's on the east as an R2 zone and then doing RM on the front. Configuring in that way, there's a difference of 3 fewer units that would be allowed. Regulatory wise, it's when you have split zoning between a project, it can lead to some complications where it's because of the small difference between the number of units that it produces. Staff recommendation is just for the RM zone for the full project, all 4 parcels. As Casey mentioned, having those 3 parcels involved in this rezone and the intended design for the project enables access for those to be removed from that bypass lane and accessed off of 6060 South. Talking with the city engineer, there would be some potential required improvements on potentially 6060 South and to manage the change in the Highland Drive bypass. There is a single lane on that T section. Likely that would increase to 2 lanes so that there's a right and left-hand turn lane. And then the 2 lanes on Highland Drive would start much sooner because it's shifting that bypass lane now over to Highland Drive. There's capacity on the shoulder there that is already paved, so there should be some minimal paving involved with that. But some of that will be on the responsibility of the developer who's kind of involved in that change. The city engineers also suggested potential traffic study impact involved with that intersection specifically of how to engineer that to work correctly. The Planning Commission had a positive recommendation. They had 5 votes in favor and 2 votes against. They have their recommendations listed in the staff report that was provided to you. And the main point on this recommendation for a rezone is to provide a transition type of zone in between the more intense Holladay Crossroads zone that is directly adjacent to this property on the south side and the less intense R2 zoning that's on the north side. So RM is kind of the fill in between those two that's an intermediary buffers between less intense residential uses and more intense commercial uses. Safety issues with traffic is obviously a big concern with the residents. And I think Casey addressed that a lot with how the traffic can be reconfigured there to address some of those concerns of residents that are coming out of Diamond Hills, and the kind of battle that they have to face going through a bypass lane and then getting onto Highland Drive. So they have kind of 2 points where there's traffic conflict. So changing the intersection up where it's now all at the T makes it much more consistent traffic where they can enter traffic more safely. Um, Greater pedestrian and biking safety as well, being separated from Highland Drive. There's improvements for cycling and walking in our Highland Drive improvements. So this would tie into those improvements. If there's any other questions that we can go through those, I'm happy to help address any of those. I know that there's probably some questions from the public that we can definitely discuss.
So, so this is in my district, and so I have spent a lot of time looking over all of the letters that residents have sent in and make sure that I understand their concerns, and want to make sure that we address the concerns that they have here. Um, a lot of people are concerned, in general, independent of this project, about the traffic on Highland Drive and pulling out of that Diamond Hills development. But it sounds like what you're saying, and just confirm, is that if we get rid of that the luge run, for lack of a better term, and people have to stop on that T or slow down if they're coming from the north, that ultimately that will have a calming effect on traffic. Is that what you're saying?
Right. It's
Okay.
calming because you have a more predictable place for cars to be. On that luge run, there can be issues with visibility. You don't know how fast cars are coming through that. And also the double point of conflict where you're having to enter traffic at that bypass point and then again when you're entering Highland Drive. So that reduces those points of conflict to a single one. Traffic is more predictable. Cars are already in 2 lanes traveling, and that's what you then have to navigate through. It's reducing conflict points is a big part of increasing traffic safety. So having fewer intersections where vehicles have to navigate entering traffic is an improvement.
Okay. Another concern that we're seeing in a lot of the public comments just deals with the overall capacity um, to service the traffic on Highland Drive. Obviously, this is a small development that their concern deals with. That there's the new apartment building to the south, and then there's also the Holladay Hills to the north, and they're just concern about that. Can you speak to Highland Drive's capacity
Sure.
to deal with all of this increased traffic with these different projects?
Yeah, I know that as a city, we're all very aware of the traffic that's there. We've managed that intersection and some of the traffic that we have to deal with getting to some of those commercial businesses or going out to Van Wiegel. Getting in between, it's a major road in the city. That road was built with capacity to manage a lot of come and go consistent traffic throughout every day for the regional development of the Cottonwood Mall. Malls have a tremendous traffic impact, and so that Highland Drive is built with 2 lanes and a high enough speed to handle that capacity. Um, and that a development that's in the location closer to an intersection and also being on that roadway that already has a lot of capacity. A smaller development like this doesn't necessarily impact that. The Holladay Hills development and Holladay Crossroads development are both taken into account on the roadway's capacity. When developments there are proposed, that traffic capacity is looked at as what can the roadway handle, and is this development then going to be something that would trigger or cause there to be necessary improvements to the roadway. Um, and our city engineer can go through some of those kind of ways that you deal with increased capacity. There's a lot of different strategies when you have a roadway that has reached its capacity, but it's typically assessed at the point where there are ongoing issues. It could be things like dedicated turn lanes or reduced speeds in some areas. There's various strategies. So I think that the city engineer is aware of the traffic that's there, and the capacity is at its current time not its full amount that it can handle. So, and that was taken into account with those developments already known.
And then there were people concerned about, so you said that the height standards are the same and the setback standards are the same, so it wouldn't bring things closer.
Right.
There were a couple of concerns about lighting and dealing with lighting from parking. And I know we just passed a residential lighting ordinance. So how will that affect this new development?
Yeah, so our new lighting ordinance, we have a standard for R1 and R2 zones, and then we have a standard for all other zones. And that all other zones coverage is things that are commercial all the way down to multifamily residential. It regulates things from your parking, pole lights, landscaping lights, and then architectural lights too. All of those architectural lights are required to be shielded. They have specific color temperatures that are required. So the lighting standards that we have passed have improved lighting within new developments. So there's less impact on neighboring properties from lights because of our new lighting ordinance.
Sorry, I'm just trying to make sure that we cover all the concerns that we've heard thus far. There was also concerns about adequacy of police and fire protection, and the Planning Commission found that everything was adequate. And I'm just wondering if you can speak to that at all as well.
Yeah, I think that so we review rezone requests and then also review again when development plans go before the Planning Commission for site plans as to what kinds of impacts or requirements are needed. So for fires, making sure that there's a fire turnaround on some properties that require that. If there's a lot of units on a single street, there has to occasionally be a additional means of egress. So our fire official reviews things and works with the applicant on, hey, these might be your fire requirements. And then the developer or builder is then required to meet those requirements. So those kinds of impacts from fire or other potential impacts like on utilities, the applicant or developer then addresses those by upgrading things or by putting in the necessary infrastructure. With police service, it's fairly minimal impact to have a residential type of development. There's a lot of impact already at the commercial area. So likely that there wouldn't be an increase due to this development specifically. All new dwelling units pay an impact fee when they are built. That impact fee goes toward police, fire. I don't know if we have one for utility, but parks is another one. So there's impact fees that new development pays when they're building, and then also continual funding through property taxes. The portion of property taxes pay for those community services that is assessed across the city.
Thank you so much for covering all of that. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
That's all I've got.
Okay. Any other questions?
Carrie?
Yeah.
The two members of the Planning Commission who voted against this project, can you tell me what their concerns were?
Yeah, I think they were more conflicted on the issue of the east parcel, where that was kind of that discussion around, well, these have two different zones currently. Why don't we just upzone one and upzone the other one accordingly instead of having it all be the RM zone? So I think that was the primary concern there.
Thanks.
Okay, anything else?
Thank you. I thought the staff report was great and it was very informative, and so thanks for your work on that.
Thank you.
Okay, We did receive a number of public comments through email. The council has had an opportunity to review those. Um, and so if you're here to comment and you also send an email, you're certainly still welcome to come comment, but you don't need to essentially repeat your email word for word because we've had an opportunity to review that. Nonetheless, public comment is now open. If you wish to address the council on this rezone application, please come forward to the podium, state your name and address, and you can take up to 3 minutes. If you're speaking for a group, you can take a couple minutes more. Otherwise, let's keep the train rolling. Anyone here to address the council on the rezone?
Hello, my name is Dan Lawler. My wife and I reside at 6018 Emerald Ridge Cove in the Highland Point PUD. Um, and we're really in favor of this. I just turned 80 years old, and I never thought I'd get to see this project change from those old houses and the landscaping torn up in the road. So I'm really in favor of it. I was a retired realtor and home lender for 45 years. And I know some of my neighbors are upset about this change for a number of reasons, but I just think it's going to be a new improvement to the city of Holladay. Somehow, I believe if you allow the road to be closed, that'll really slow down the traffic. I'm sure the stop sign would go away, but it would slow the traffic just making that curve. To get out of our development currently, if we're going to turn south, we have to look at 3 lanes. We got that little lane coming down where they're just flying down there, some of them, probably over 50 miles an hour. And the others, coming down um, from the west. And then those it's just it's 3 lanes. And when we have friends over, we warn them when you're leaving, if you're going to go south, you got to be very careful. You got to look at all 3 lanes. There's no place to pull over. So this would be a tremendous improvement if you could close their street down and make just the 2 lanes through a curve. And I guess you own the park already there, that parcel that's there, and do something with that. But I'm really in favor of it. Um, Obviously, the area needs something. The current owners are never going to do anything with those properties to fix them up. I know the city has fined the one owner a couple times because he wouldn't take care of his landscaping. So um, another point is that with the new 70 or 80 unit there's been a lot of talk about the traffic that's going to cause. Um, it's progress and something it's there, and this is going to put a little more traffic in our area, but it's going to be minimal. I was afraid it was going to go commercial, so it's adjacent to some commercial property. So I'd rather see some individual owners, uh, living in these properties rather than being a big apartment building, or having a commercial thing. So anyway, that's my opinion.
Thanks very much.
Okay.
Yeah, my name is Bill Flandro, 2015 East, 60660 South. I'm actually right next to that development that's going in. We're in a twin home. It's been an ideal place to live. It's a dead end street. There are only 10 homes on that whole street. I really like the idea of closing off that little one way strip because right now it's hard to get out a lot of times of our streets. You have 30, 40 cars coming through there. If it's not that busy, then you've got it coming through about 40 miles an hour. Now, I obviously, like everybody else, I had concern about the traffic, but we're not going to do anything about that because they've got a big apartment building going in. They're going to start moving in there in another month. That's 84 units. And I went up to the city when they were getting ready to approve that. I said, I've got a real concern about the traffic coming through there. And he said, I don't think it'd be that bad. finally just said, well, you've got your head up your ass, and we'll leave it at that. We can't do anything about it. But this is going to obviously going to be some traffic. But I like the concept of what he's trying to put in. I've looked at the plans. Every time we have a windstorm, we've got tree limbs all over our backyard because there are so many trees there. And he said he would definitely trim those up. So I'm actually in favor of it. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Angie Meredith. I preside at 2005 East Diamond Hills Lane. I'm representing myself. My husband and I disagree on this, but I'm here strongly in favor of this project. And I can speak for some of our neighbors. We're not all on the same page, and I think the biggest concern is the traffic. But I am just thrilled that that corner is going to be cleaned up. We bought in 2018, and I feel like it's just gotten worse since 2018. The traffic and just the general presence and upkeep of those three homes. My name is probably known because I've written to the city on several occasions. Same thing, tree limbs down on the street. There's people biking, there's people walking, there's mothers pushing their children in strollers, and they can't even walk along that sidewalk. And I can't either. And I'm a runner and I enjoy walking around there, but the traffic is a concern, but also being able to walk along the sidewalk there. And I think I'm more concerned with the 84 unit apartments with the traffic than I am what Casey Kershaw is proposing. So I am in favor 100%. I think it's going to clean it up. It's going to be a nice presence coming into Holladay. You have that beautiful island there with the monument. And then you look to the east and you've got, I mean, it's not very pleasant to look at. So I'm thrilled that we're doing something to add to the city. And as you come into Holladay, I think that this will be, I just think it will add. It will be very nice to have that area cleaned up.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Paul Knott. I reside with my wife, Sherry, on 6010 South Diamond Hills Lane, just the second house right in from where you turn in and out. So we have the opportunity to see the traffic challenges and everything that goes on. What's interesting is when the project was first proposed, I texted the gentleman that's going to do that, and I believe he's going to accomplish what he says he's going to do. I think he can beautify the area. I think he can do a number of great things for that area for us. We've had that challenge with the neighbors on the south, and with it looking like it did, I think is a good entrance to Holladay. And we moved from Murray to Holladay to live in Holladay. We've always wanted to live here, my wife and I and our young daughter. So what's interesting is I think all the comments talking about the fear and some neighbors wanting it and some neighbors not. And I think we've heard from some of the things. And Emily, I love that you had so many comments and you've really listened to them and listened to our fears. I think the fear of traffic, I'll come back to the fear of crime coming up, I think is a reasonable fear. I think a fear of the building that's happening, the fear of how it's going to look, all of those things. I feel like those have been personally addressed for me. My fear is not because crime's going to go up and not because it's going to look bad or not because we're going to have some new neighbors. My fear is the development will be done and Holladay City won't put enough funds to make the traffic correct because that's going to take an investment from Holladay City. So I haven't heard anyone from Holladay City say, yes, we like the idea. We're going to invest dollars because I believe that park is going to take investment from Holladay City. So I would be curious, and I don't know if I can ask questions. This is my first time addressing the council.
Generally, we don't get into a back and forth
That's
debate.
fine.
This is your opportunity to be heard.
That's absolutely fine. So my fear is that it will be developed, it will look great, and the traffic won't be addressed. And we'll still have that runway that comes down, My wife and I sit out in the back deck. We see how the traffic goes. We see how fast that traffic moves. We see how fast the traffic moves when we're trying to exit our neighborhood. And it's a risk. Our daughter's 20, and I warn her about it all the time. You got to be really careful coming out of our neighborhood just because everyone's driving so fast. So I am a proponent for this. I think it would be great. I am not if we don't have an investment from Holladay City and address the traffic. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else for a comment regarding the rezone application? Please come on up. Hey, good to see you.
Diane Hazen. I own the building at 6065, and Casey would be my new neighbor. I cannot embrace all of this enough. Um, the developers from day one with that new project to the south of me have worked with me. I've toured it. They've worked with the city. It's amazing because I have sat there for 32 years in a 1960 bank building, and people come in and they go, wow, my grandparents had the Chevron station, and I used to bank here when it was the bank. And I love it because there has been no new development in 32 years. And the apartment complex, they are complying with everything to make it beautiful. Monty's is the same way. Casey is adding something to our District 5 that is amazing. It's amazing. It's going to be beautiful. All of the neighbors, I know all 10 of them. And we're just, the only concern I hear is our 6060. They want to be able to get to their home and back. I hear nothing from Casey that they won't be able to do that. And Casey and I've worked together about the traffic in and out. I can't say enough. I just think it's time that we make some really beautiful changes to District 5. Completely endorse it. Thank you.
All right. Anyone else for public comment on rezone application? Don't be shy. Going once. Going twice. Okay. I think we can close the public hearing. The objection to closing the public hearing? Okay. We've had some good comment there. Appreciate that very much. So we'll close the public hearing. Expect we'll have a vote on this next week. Is that correct? Vote next week? Okay. All right. And then also in the work session following the city council meeting, we will be discussing the public hearing. In fact, we'll be discussing all the public hearings, but I expect the one we'll be spending the most time on would be this one. Okay, moving on. We'll go to item number 4, public hearing on proposed budget amendments for fiscal year 2025-2026. Christian. Please feel free to not hang around unless you're totally interested in the rest of the agenda.
All right. Good evening, Mayor and Council. This is the final budget amendment to fiscal year 2026 budget. I'll start with the general fund. First, with the revenue side, we are budgeting an increase in sales tax revenue of $220,000. This is just a result of a small spike we've seen in our overall sales tax revenue in fiscal year 2026. Additionally, we're budgeting an increase in appropriation of fund balance of $1.8184 million. I'll go into the details of that more specifically right now. The first section we have relocation costs, rent of the temporary city hall construction site utilities, and then the portable trailer. If the council recalls previous work sessions, we've discussed that we originally had the intention of budgeting certain items within our local building authority. After conversations with our auditors, we found that we actually need to move those expenses to the general fund. So we're, rather than budgeting them within the LBA, we're now budgeting them within the general fund. The benefit of this is that it does open up some extra dollars within the LBA for our projects that we're working on. And those increases include the relocation costs, the rent of the temporary city hall, the construction site utilities, and then the portable trailer, which would be located at our regular 4580 South location and would really work as sort of a hub for any on-site activities that we have, or a location for our city engineers to work out of when they're monitoring the project.
So just to summarize, these first four items are budget movement as opposed to new budget or additional funds. It's just moving it from one organization to the other.
Correct. So rather than using LBA dollars, which came from the Capital Projects Fund or from our bond proceeds, we're now using sales tax dollars. It just happened to coincide that we did see an increase in our sales tax dollars. Otherwise, it would have been a larger appropriation of general fund balance. Moving on from those, if there aren't any other questions, we have an increase in our translator fees. This has been an ongoing conversation with the addition of Mill Creek. We've seen a larger increase in the need for translation services within our court. This increase is just recognizing that additional need. We have a small adjustment to our unified fire contract near the end of the previous fiscal budgeting process last year. There was a small adjustment that happened to the UFA contract. It's a $2,000 adjustment. I believe it's more just a rounding error in the initial budget that we had received from UFA. Next, we have a decrease in the salaries, wages for full-time. This is specifically within the community development department. And this is just recognizing the fact that we had a position which was previously supposed to be our part-time building inspector. It was a position we've had difficulty filling. And the other side of that is we are increasing our building inspection contract. So reducing the salary and then increasing our contracted services by the same amount for a net neutral budget effect. But just recognizing that we do have that additional need for inspection services. Next, we have an increase to our engineering contract. This is with Forsgren primarily, and this is for right-of-way and just some general services that Forsgren does for us. Just as we're getting close to the end of the year, we have a few items that are getting close to fully appropriating their entire budget, and so we're just trying to create a little bit of room for those projects that are getting a little closer. Next, we have our credit card processing fees, which we're increasing by $9,500. If you notice, you look at the base budget, it's quite a bit lower and it's a pretty substantial increase. The reason for the pretty big increase pretty late in the year, we had a number of building permits, which traditionally, if it's over a certain dollar threshold, we require applicants to pay via check. There were just a few permits which were taken via credit card when they should have been check. So because of that, we had to increase this amount. This problem was addressed with an employee who was just unaware of the policy. So we've informed them, and it shouldn't happen again.
Somebody got some airline miles out of it, though.
Somebody did. Somebody did. And then the next line item, the last two are actually transfers. The first one is $1.2 million of transfer from the general fund to the capital projects fund. And this is primarily for Highland Drive. With the logic being that with our general fund having a pretty healthy fund balance, we're relatively near the state maximum of 35% unreserved general fund balance as a percentage of general fund revenue. So we're trying to preserve in the event that we do have additional fund balance that's unassigned, that's above what the state maximum is, we're just intending to move that over to capital projects to start to try to fund our large project in Highland Drive. So we may not necessarily transfer the full 1.2 million, but this is to give us the flexibility. If we do have that extra cash, we want to be able to move it over to capital projects to meet those needs.
I also understand when you're grant writing for that sort of thing, it's good to already have some of your own matching money already
correct
sitting there. It increases your chances, right?
Yes. And then that final transfer for $59,000, this is a transfer which is actually more associated with the fiscal year 2027 budget, along with our spike that we've seen in our sales tax revenue within the general fund in 2026. We also have some projects in 2027. So we have extra cash in fiscal year 26. So the intention is that we're moving some of that extra cash from the general fund to the capital projects fund to meet some of those immediate needs that we're seeing in fiscal year 27. And that's the vehicle replacement and then also unrestricted capital projects. Typically, what happens with our unrestricted capital projects, it's really meant as a budget that's specifically to use for projects we don't necessarily know are going to come up. It's for Jared to be able to have some flexibility. And we don't always spend that entire budget. So the amount of this transfer is just the amount that we are intending to spend now in fiscal year 26. So it's not the full budget. We're just recouping the amount we spent in 26, if that makes sense. And then moving on from there, we're moving on to the Arts Fund. We have a couple changes here, and the little bit of background I wanted to provide on the Arts Fund. In years past, we had budgeted a lot more specifically around events. So the budget was very much each individual event had its own overall budget, and then within it, it had more categories, and it made the budget really difficult to read and very difficult to use. So in fiscal year 26, we consolidated a lot of those budgets, and we still track the individual events, but we consolidated a lot of that information to make it a little more user friendly in the Arts Fund. Uh, and along with that, with it being the first year, we had some growing pains, I'll say, in figuring out, the exact coding of where things were going to go. So within the Arts Fund, just with that a little bit of background, we're increasing arts sales by 11,339, and this is specifically associated with our fine art and tiny art show. We just ended up having a lot more interest, a lot more sales than we originally anticipated, so we're increasing that. And the other side of that increase is the expense, which is directly correlated to it, and is the individual artist payments. So when we sell the artist's art for them, they receive a portion back. So we're increasing the revenue, and then we're also increasing the expense, which is the redistribution of that sale back to the artist. And then we also have an increase in miscellaneous revenue. That's primarily an increase just from the interest which is earned on the cash that is within the Arts Fund. I believe there's roughly $200,000 of cash in there. So we did earn a little bit of interest on that, and then there are a few other small miscellaneous items we collect revenues on within the Arts Fund, but that's the primary piece. Additionally, we have a reduction in employee benefits of 10,000. Previously mentioned, an employee we have is not taking city benefits, and so we're just reducing that budget. And then we have these other line items that we're increasing. If you have any questions on the specific ones and how they're changing, I'm happy to address those. But otherwise, I'll just point out that the overall effect of this budget amendment is that we are increasing our contribution to fund balance within the Arts Fund by 1,200. So we're not appropriating any additional fund balance. We're recognizing increased revenue, and then we're moving around budget within the fund. Any questions on the Arts Fund? Okay. All right, moving on to the grants fund. This is a very small adjustment. This is just the trellis columns and the skate park project, which was a grant project, which went very slightly over budget just by 2,000. So we're just increasing that budget just slightly. There was a small overage, and then we're appropriating $2,000 of fund balance for that as well. All right, moving on to the capital projects fund. This is the other side of that transfer out from the general fund, which is a transfer in within the capital projects fund of $1,259,000. That's the 1.2 for Highland Drive, and then 59,000 for the unrestricted capital projects and the vehicle replacement for fiscal year 27. So we're transferring the cash in. It's going to be available in 27. We're going to use fund balance in 27. And then the other adjustment within the capital projects fund, we are recognizing that the capital projects fund is actually earning a little bit more interest than we originally budgeted, about 209,000, which is just based off of the actuals that we've seen so far year to date. We're anticipating it's going to be a little higher. And then the other side, the expenditure side, we're increasing by 180,000. This goes along with the previous adjustment I've mentioned relating to the LBA. And these are improvements to this building that we needed to make it serviceable. We had originally planned to have those in the LBA. The auditors said we shouldn't be able to do that, so now we're doing it within the capital projects fund. And it just happened that within the capital projects fund, interest revenue is looking a little higher, so it's not necessarily causing an appropriation of fund balance to be able to increase that budget. Any questions on that one? Okay, great. And then finally, we have the stormwater fund, and within this one, we're not appropriating any additional fund balance. We're just reallocating MS4 compliance. I spoke with Jared; he doesn't intend to use that budget, and so we're increasing curb and gutter repair, which has gone slightly over budget, and then contingency for projects. So this was basically bond proceeds, which we had received. That we didn't end up expending. So basically within the stormwater fund, we had, with the bond, we had several projects we were doing, and then we had a contingency budget. And basically we're just moving it out of contingency and increasing corrugated metal pipe replacement. So any questions on that one? Okay.
No, good and healthy.
Great.
All good.
Thank you very much.
Okay, there you have it. Proposed budget amendments for fiscal years 2025, 2026. Uh, we'll open a public hearing. If you wish to address the council regarding those budget amendments, please come to the podium. Seeing none, without objection, we'll close the public hearing on budget amendments. And then item number 5, let's go to public hearing on the proposed fiscal year budget for the coming year. Christian, you're back.
Okay, so these are our changes from the initial tentative budget that we presented. And the first thing I want to point out is the general property tax line item, that very first one. You'll notice that we haven't budgeted any change there, but I specifically wanted to call this out because we are still waiting on a final certified tax rate. And once we receive that, we'll have a better idea of what we will receive in new growth. As of this morning, when I checked it, it was 92,000. The base budget included an increase of 57,000. So assuming that 92 doesn't change, we'll have an increase of 40,000. But again, that has not been finalized, so we're still pending the certified tax rate website updating that information.
Heaven forbid there's a budget amendment coming.
Heaven forbid. I love doing budget amendments, so happy to do that. And next I'll move on to general fund sales tax. We're increasing it by 67,937. I feel comfortable doing this increase because the anticipated sales tax I'm calculating that we should receive in fiscal year 26, which is just based off of historical trends and what we've received year to date. I'm anticipating we're going to receive around 7,310,000. So with this budget increase for fiscal year 27, it's still almost $100,000 less than what I'm anticipating we're going to collect within fiscal year 26. So I feel like we're still in a realm where we're being pretty conservative in what we're expecting to receive.
Christian, I don't know if you've been over to Magnolia Bakery. I think that they're making that
they're making it up for us.
3 days, past 3 days. So.
Oh man. Okay. Yes. So with Magnolias, I think we should be okay.
I
Okay.
that RDA base. Well,
yeah, they're gonna take a portion too. Okay. The next line item is an increase in the rent for the temporary city hall of this building. When I originally read the contract, there is a common area maintenance fee which is associated with the rent of this building. And originally I had read the contract as that was going to be an annual amount. Upon reviewing it again, I realized it was actually a monthly fee. So I had to increase this to recognize the fact that it was a monthly fee and not an annual one. So that's the reason for that increase. And that's by far the largest.
Is it still a good deal?
Yes. yes. And I may have misread the contract, but Gina didn't, so Gina knew. Okay, moving on from there, we have a small adjustment to the Unified Police Department contract. It's actually decreasing by 7,000. The initial number in the tentative budget, there was just a small rounding difference. We had based it off of a percentage increase, and then when I got the final number, I think it was 0.01 different, so I had to capture that little change. Next, we have the janitorial restroom. This is an increase, which again is originally when I received the contract for this, it had read that there was a monthly fee, and I had assumed it was monthly just during the months that the janitorial for the park was happening, because it shuts down for certain periods during the winter, and it was actually an annual fee. So even when the park is closed, we're still paying a portion of that janitorial cost. They just annualized it rather than when they're actually performing the service. That's the reason for that small adjustment. And then you'll notice the next few sections are all the insurance specifically. And in aggregate, it's an $8,600 increase. And this is just because we've received final rates from Utah Local Governments Trust. So we have a small adjustment once we receive the actual final numbers. And then you'll notice the computer software budget is the total increase there is $1,000, $1,051. So it's a pretty small adjustment, but I figured I would capture it once we did receive information that Microsoft had a small rate increase. So that's just capturing across all the various departments. And then finally, within the general fund, we have an increase to the transfer to the arts fund for programs of $3,000. And then the arts fund, it's a transfer in, and then we have an increase in professional services and training. And you may have a question on why are we increasing programs transfer in for 3,000 rather than a personnel specific one. And the reason for this is because a large portion of the Arts Fund budget, specifically relating to administration, is grant funded. So if we're increasing the amount that we're spending on administration, it's decreasing the amount of grant that's available for programs. So we're just capturing that if that explains, if that makes sense. Any questions on these changes since tentative?
Those are all pretty routine.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, we might see you again in a minute. All right, so we're at item number 5. Let's open the public hearing for proposed fiscal year budget for the coming year. If there are any who would wish to address the council regarding the coming year's budget, please come to the podium, name and address. And I'm not seeing anyone jump out of their seat. Going once, going twice. Okay, without objection, we'll close the public hearing on the proposed fiscal year 2026-27 budget and proceed to item number 6, public hearing on proposed changes to the city's compensation schedule. And who would that be? Okay.
So in your packet, you'll find a compensation pay plan for fiscal 2027. This includes elected officials' salaries and then ranges for all of our positions. One thing that I'll note is that we do have a number of positions that are appointed, and I'm just going to read those out because I think we have a requirement to note that. That is the city manager position, the assistant city manager, finance director, community and economic development director, public services director, city prosecutor. And city recorder. Those are our appointed positions. The pay plan reflects an adjustment of 2.7% for a cost of living increase, as well as some targeted market adjustments. Any questions for me?
The elected officials did not get any targeted market adjustment. Okay. Okay. Let's go ahead with proceed with item number 6 and open the public hearing on proposed changes to the city's compensation schedule for elected and appointed statutory officers, including executive municipal officers and all other municipal officers for the 2026-2027 fiscal year. If there are any in the chamber who wish to address the council on this item, please step forward with name and address. Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing on the compensation schedule and proceed to item number 7, public hearing on consolidated fee schedule.
So in your packet is an updated version of our consolidated fee schedule. We've moved it from a Word document into a matrix, and we're hoping this will be easier for the public to find fees. So you'll notice that in a number of cases there are not proposed fee changes, but we have listed current fees. I do want to highlight a couple of things. If you look at the section entitled Business License Fees, we have the current schedule, and based on the council's direction a few meetings ago, it's our understanding those fees will remain in place until January 1 of 2027. And then following that are the new business license fees that you gave concurrence to that would become effective January 1, 2027. Those are categorized in slightly different ways, again, to provide a little more clarity, but the categories are all still there. Um, one other section that I wanted to highlight is the stormwater fee, and that is on page 4, I think, of the consolidated fee schedule. Um, Also reflecting your direction, this document reflects an increase again beginning January 1 of 2027, moving the ERU from 650 to 750. One correction that I have in the document that is in front of you is that for class 2, rather than reflecting an increase moving from 1625 to 750, we would take that ERU and multiply it by 2.5. And so I believe that's 1875. And we'll make that correction prior to your adoption next week. Any questions?
Of course, the other main item that we discussed was the concept of the renewal fee, which for most businesses, I understand that reduces their annual business license fee when you're doing a renewal as opposed to initial, whereas that had not previously been the case. So, as I understand, the bulk of a number of businesses then will be saving money on the renewal. There are a number of increases for specific business types that have heavier disproportionate costs for public safety, but your run of the mill, I shouldn't say run of the mill, our businesses are all wonderful and but our standard businesses that don't have excessive public safety disproportionate fee allocation, those sorts of businesses will likely see a savings in their business licensing upon renewal.
That's correct. And you'll see that reflected. So under the new business section that's in purple, um, there is the new businesses and then renewal rates, um, given the intention that you just expressed.
That's the headline. Okay.
Right. Okay.
All right. Any questions? Okay. Let's proceed then to the public hearing on the proposed amendments to the consolidated fee schedule. Any who wish to address the council on these changes, please come to the podium, name and address, same routine. Oh, all right.
I'm Crystal Nichols, and I just want to say I'm really excited for the business license changes. That's all.
Thank you. All right. Anyone else? Whether you're that excited about it or not, please. Okay.
That may be the most excited comment we've had on fees.
I think so. I think so. Put a bookmark on that. Okay, if there's no objection, we'll close the public hearing on proposed amendments to the consolidated fee schedule. Okay, that gets us through all that super official stuff. Let's go to item number 8 and have a little fun with our holiday staff service awards. Gina.
So I have 3 awards to present tonight, and the first is to our friend Crystal Nichols that we just heard from. Crystal, would you like to come up here? Crystal has been here with us for the last 5 years, but honestly, it feels like she's been here forever. Crystal was hired during the pandemic and was, I think, one of the first interviews that we did back in person in 2021 when it felt kind of weird for us to be meeting face to face with people. Um, it was also a time where we could barely get anyone to apply for our jobs. So we were immediately struck by Crystal's enthusiasm and positivity, which you just got to witness. As I've gotten to know her and she's become a part of our team, I've also really come to appreciate her willingness to pitch in on whatever needs to be done. And that's pretty much how Crystal also came to be our special events coordinator. Crystal had some previous experience, and we asked her if we could just add that to her job responsibilities, and she said, sure. I really appreciate Crystal's enthusiasm, her commitment, her positivity, and her willingness to do what's needed um, that she brings to her work here at Holladay. So, congratulations. Jared Bunch. So, Jared's been with us officially for almost 5 years. But he spent a couple of years working with us on a contract basis with his previous firm, Forest Grant Engineering. Um, Jared's position as Director of Public Services was one of my first priorities after coming to Holladay and listening to the priorities of the council. The council at that time, just like this council, was deeply committed to infrastructure improvements, and it seemed to me like we needed someone in-house to do that. So we spent a lot of time trying to find the perfect person that would be a great fit.
Oh, we got Jared. No.
We had
I'm
a
so
couple,
sorry.
I'll be
You just,
honest, we had a couple of missteps. We did have one person who was here for 6 days. I'm not kidding.
hey, love you,
But
buddy.
I finally was able to persuade Jared to come work with us in 2021. And what I appreciated then about Jared is what I continue to appreciate about him today. If Jared and I talk about something that needs to be done, I know it's going to be done. When I ask him follow up questions in 2 months, he never tells me, or I've forgotten entirely about that. He tells me what he's been doing over the last 2 months and is usually near completion. I appreciate that. I appreciate his patience, his diligence, his willingness to continue to engage with residents who might not appreciate those infrastructure projects that really are going to benefit them and our neighborhoods. And I am really glad to work with him every day. So thank you, Jared. John Cheerlink. So I was thinking about what I said at John's 15-year award. And this is now John's 20-year with the city. And at 15 years, I said, John's the guy you want on your team. He's dedicated, persistent, unflappable. He's the guy everybody wants to work with. And over the last 5 years, John has really had an opportunity to grow as he's assumed the director position. And so now John's not only the guy you want to work with, he's the guy you want to work for. He's really created a team that is dedicated to quality of life in Holladay. And he works every day to serve this community and make life better. So John's our guy. He's the guy we want on our team. Thank you.
I understand we have one more, but our presenter is changing.
Every once in a while, we need to switch hit. I have a distinct pleasure as of about half an hour ago. Honoring somebody who has spent the last decade dedicated to the role of city manager. We are here to celebrate Gina Chamniss's 10-year of exceptional service to the city of Holladay. I'm pretty sure the 10-year anniversary is a diamond anniversary. I don't think there's any diamonds in here, but so absolutely fitting for Gina's last 10 years of service to the city. Just as facets of a diamond have I've witnessed firsthand that Gina represents thousands of decisions made with integrity, countless hours spent solving complex problems with transparency, and a daily steadfast commitment to maintaining a high level of service with that transparency. Over the past decade, Gina has been a pillar of reliability for our city, whether unraveling complex legislative implications or simply guiding staff through challenging transitions. She approaches every task with calm professionalism and really deep sense of duty that can only come from someone truly dedicated to public service and dedicated to residents, business owners, and visitors to the City of Holladay. So, on behalf of the city council staff, and citizens who benefit from your hard work every single day, I want to say thank you. Thank you for your loyalty and your expertise, and especially your friendship. And thanks for 10 incredible years.
Well, I think I can speak for the council when I say we really have a truly remarkable staff led by Gina. And thanks to the four of you for reaching these benchmarks with us. And we hope to see another 5 years for your next benchmark. And I'm sorry, Barry, did you want to? Oh, sure, let's do it. Sure.
Yeah, Lena. Tell us what you do. See, look, I can totally see this.
Okay, great. Let's proceed to item number 9, quarterly reports, first from UPD and then from UFA. Chief Will.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. First and foremost, congratulations to those who got their awards today. I personally appreciate all the day-to-day interaction and work that we have as a partnership with the city employees here, and that's very well deserved, and they do great, phenomenal work. For my quarterly report, it's pretty straightforward, and we'll keep this short for you tonight. As you'll see on the very first slide, the stats for the first quarter for January, February, March are fairly consistent with what we've seen over the last couple of years, maybe even just trending a smidgen smaller, but by and large trending right about the same number of stats. If you go to the next page and the next slide on there, you can see the types of calls we've had last year in 2025 during the same quarter compared to this year at the same quarter. And overall, we saw maybe a decrease of about 28 cases overall from last year to this year, which just goes along the lines of seeing that everything's kind of trending about the same. And then if you'll move on to the next slide for me, this is where we get into our traffic stats. You can see, with the exception of February, we generally run about in the neighborhood of about 40 traffic cases every month. February, we trended a little bit lower, but by and large, everything's trending about the same if you look into that. And then the next few slides after that, actually the response times. I want to touch on this for one quick second. You'll see our priority 1, 2, and 3 responses. January, especially for priority 1, I know this has been a question before in the past. We were about 4 minutes, and then 5 minutes, and then 6 minutes. Every month when I get our stats from our analyst, she will highlight the cases that have the longest response times in there. I will go back and personally review those cases. And for the ones for specifically in March, when we were hitting about 6 minutes for our priority 1s, the reason that was a little bit higher was because the cases normally get classified as maybe a priority one. They were missing person cases, but they were ones where there had been some time that had been passed and they just requested a phone call to report that person over the phone. And so they just had to report to the phone. It's not one of those emergent respond to calls. And so that adds to the response time. Otherwise, everything else is trending about the same and consistent with neighboring communities as far as their response times go. If you go to the next few slides, each one of those slides represents your individual districts. You can see the types of calls that we handled in your areas for each of those different months. And then if we will just scroll down to the second to last page on my presentation, the cases of note, there's 3 that I wanted to highlight. The first one I will just bypass because, as you'll recall, last time at City Council, we recognized the detectives for their involvement in these burglary cases, and I read that case to you then. The other 2 that we talked about one was a hit and run case where there was a pedestrian that was pushing a baby stroller with kids inside that stroller when a car struck them as they were crossing the street. Fortunately, the person that was hit pushed the baby stroller out of the way, so they were not hit, but the adult was. Our officer that was assigned that case quickly went to work, identified the suspect the very next day, and pursued charges against that individual for the hit and run. The next one that I wanted to highlight was on March 2nd, which was a traffic accident at Van Winkle and 5600 South. There were very significant injuries. One vehicle collided with 2 others in that intersection. The reason that I'm highlighting this one was because one of the individuals that was seriously injured was unrestrained and was ejected from the vehicle. This just and is suffering from very severe injuries. Our crash analysis and reconstruction unit was called out to investigate that crash, and that is still ongoing. But I think it just highlights the importance of using safety restraints in our vehicles today. And obviously that person would not have been as seriously hurt, but that investigation is still going on. The last thing that I wanted to highlight, and I usually at this slide, I highlight one of our shared services, but I felt like this quarter was very important. And I know Mayor Fotheringham has touched on this in his council reports, but in March, we went full board with LDS Hospital. We have 2 of our officers that are assigned to that hospital full time. That's their job. They're working from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. They're responsible for all police action within that entire campus. And those 2 officers are actually assigned now to the Holladay precinct, and that's why I'm highlighting it here with you tonight. And when we do our budget presentation, you will see that as a result of this partnership, it comes as a cost savings to you and Holladay as well, because they're covering some of the costs of the precinct chief, myself, Lieutenant Ackerman, our precinct secretary, our victim advocate, and then ultimately in the shared services, because they're paying the full share and their portion of shared services being part of it, and comes at a savings to you and all of the partners. And that's one of the beauties of this organization, is that as more people join, shared service costs come down, and that's a true example of what's happening there. That's everything I had to report to you guys, unless you have any questions for me. Perfect. Thank you so much.
Ken Brown.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Again, I'm going to keep mine short as well, since you'll have to hear from me later on tonight. So if we take a look at this one-page slide. So as you can see here, again, just like UPD, there's not much change. I will point out a couple things. January 1st of this year, there is our reporting system where we mine a lot of this data. The federal government rolled out a new reporting system, and it's not complete. And so if you just look at the emergence calls, where it says 14% emergent, normally we're in the 30s, 34, 35, 36. I expect it to be the same. Again, emergent, we run emergent or non-emergent, and as one of the biggest risks to firefighters and the public is when the big red truck comes down, lights and sirens. It's dangerous for us. It's dangerous for the public. So if it's not a life-threatening thing where we feel like a minute or 2 minutes is not going to change it, we don't go lights and sirens to the call. So that's probably closer to 30, 35%, maybe up to high 30s. Again, on the EMS falls unique to Holladay, we do have an aging population, so falls is always number 1. And then if you go down to the bottom, there's just some more metrics that usually don't change too much. I do have some things that I do wanted to talk about. that I don't have a slide for because they came late in the game. Earlier this week on Tuesday, I walked the Knutson Park. So if you remember, I emailed some of you, and we're looking for some mitigation work for our fuels crew. As a reminder, our fuels crew is a wildland crew of 10, and then they have a supervisor, and they do multiple things. They do wildland mitigation work. We can call them out for initial attack or any sort of wildfire attacking duties, or when they do other things like mop up or fire watch. For instance, if we had a grass fire, a lot of times while the fire is contained, it there could be crews there for 6, 8, 12, 24 hours, just making sure that it's out, either watching it or cold trail, what we call cold trailing it, whereas we actually walk it and we actually touch it with our hands to make sure that nothing can spark up again. You don't want your primary emergency response crews doing that for 24 hours. So we can call this fuels crew out with they're located in Camp Williams, or they're located at Station 120 in Riverton, and they come out and do those things to free up the actual fire engine, and the crews will do other things. So with their supervisor, we walk Knutson Park, and in that southwest corner, if you go across the bridge, there's kind of that really cool shaded trail area. Well, there's a ton of dead trees and growth, and then all the way up to 215, which a lot of fires are off the side of the freeway, a lot of grass fires. So what the fuels crew is going to do is that crew of 10 with their supervisor, he says there's about a week's worth of work. They're going to go work on that. We don't have the exact time yet because we just don't know how busy the wildfire season is, or any of that. But they're going to go out there and they're going to work on that southwest corner all the way up to 215. And for about a week, there's going to be about 11 of them cleaning it up. So that's pretty awesome. The one other thing I wanted to highlight is what we're going to do is Unified Fire as a whole on red flag warning days. So as you know, this year wildfire risk it's at the forefront for everybody with how dry we were. So the National Weather Service, they recommend red flag, or they give us red flag warning days, what they're called, and that's where when weather conditions where fires may start easily, spread rapidly, or show extreme fire behavior, and that there's a combination of dryness and fuels or low relative humidity, wind, and temperature. So on red flag warning days, we are going to staff an extra brush truck, almost what we do on the 4th of July and 24th of July. We're going to staff an extra brush truck on the north side, an extra brush truck on the south side, and then a water tender. And what's different about that is those will be completely dedicated to wildfire response, period. So at all our stations, everything is what's called a jump rig. So for instance, your closest brush truck in Holladay is actually located up here on 1911 East 3300 South at Station 106. Now, if they're on a medical call, then they're on their ladder truck. There's no one there to get on a brush truck. So that's the thing. So there can't be anybody on a medical call. Where these brush trucks that are going to be staffed on red flag warning days, purely for wildfire response, which is a big deal because the best thing you can do on a grass fire on with extreme fire conditions is to get to it fast, right? So and those, that one on the north side and one on the south side, they can be mobile depending on what's going on. They can move them around if there's some sort of event. And so that's one thing that Unified Fire Authority is going to do this year with the extreme fire danger coming up, or perceived extreme fire danger. So again, I don't have a slide for those because those are barely come down the pipe. But does anybody have any questions?
Yeah, Cameron, do you expect that's great. I love that idea, and I love that being proactive. Uh, are there behavioral changes you would like to see in citizens on those same red flag days that then need to be communicated through the city communication process? Or is it simply a UFA resource allocation, or is there a citizen element to red flag warning days?
So, Mayor, that's actually a great question, and I'll have to get back to you on that. I assume that our information outreach people are going to do something like that. Again, as far as all the fire restrictions and things like that, usually UFA piggybacks off the state as far as the fire restrictions. But I'll have to get back to you on that because I think that's a great idea. The only problem is usually that the red flag days, sometimes you get 12-hour warning. So maybe they can have something that's pre-canned and ready to post. Hey, this might be the red flag. And
even if it's reposting the number to call, or if it's just 911, or be on the watch for wildfires because we're in extreme bad.
100%.
If there's some sort of thing we need to communicate, let us know.
100%. I'll work with our information outreach team, and I'll work with Lena on some sort of messaging that we can put out on those days. And if anybody was just wondering, last year there was only 5 red flag warning days. So we're only expecting 5 to 10 if the history repeats itself. So that's where we are. But again, being proactive, especially everything that's going on in California, and I know it keeps Chief Pritchett up at night. I think is what he said. So,
Yeah.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Okay, city manager report, Gina.
Nothing from me tonight.
Oh, okay. Let's start on the other end. Councilmember Sundwall.
Nothing from me tonight either.
Okay. Councilmember Durham.
I was going to report on the tree committee, but we have Megan McGilvery here to talk to us about it a little bit later, so I'm going to defer to her.
Okay, very good. Councilmember Bradley.
Yeah, we have a couple things going on with the Arts Council in the next couple of weeks. Tomorrow is our Page to Stage performance of The Mitten. That will be at 11:30 at the LDS Church on Neighbor Lane. It's 5565 South Neighbor Lane. It's a fun, come see 32. I think it's our biggest group. 32 kids, 12 and or 11 and to 6 perform. Will be quite the treat. And then tickets for Fiddler on the Roof are on sale now. That will be June 25th through the 30th at our Holladay City Park. It should be a beautiful production. So get your tickets and come and see.
Councilmember Quinn.
Thank you. So 2 weeks ago, Holladay voted to be a part of the Utah Clean Energy Program, and the statutory period of time has now passed. And of the original 19 communities, only 3 of them decided not to go forward. We're really pleased with that number. So we have just a hair over 95% of the residences in the communities that originally got together and joined. So we're really pleased with that number and pleased to be going forward with that program.
Fantastic. Councilmember Gray.
I don't have anything tonight.
Okay, I just have one item. Due to a UPD item, and that has to do with some retirements at higher level command and some minor restructuring. So a number of UPD communities could experience some change in their precinct just due to some staffing shifting and changing due to retirements and a small restructuring. So those changes will be known later in June. And if anything relevant hits us, we'll send out an email about those changes. Okay, that's all I have. Let's move to calendar. So we've got council meetings on next week where we'll be voting on a number of these public hearing items, and then nothing until July 16th. And then any other items related to calendar we need to be concerned about? Okay. All right. So that's all we have for council meeting, official council meeting. So I'm happy to take a motion to recess to a work meeting.
Motion to recess to a work meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we're recessed. Anybody need a break for a couple of minutes? We good? All right. Let's proceed. Item number 1, review of Block E schematic. Gina, this is the Block E relative to the Holladay Hills development and the workforce housing provision.
So I'll just do a short introduction, and then I think Mac Woodbury will do a much more complete presentation. But just a reminder, so late last year, the previous council, and then in January, this council and RDA board approved an affordable housing agreement. As you'll recall, we have a commitment to develop 100 affordable housing units within 10 years after the RDA began collecting increment. So that gives us a pretty tight timeline along with some statutory requirements as well. Uh, so the agreement specified that by June 30th of this year, the RDA and the developer would meet and review the concept for the development of affordable housing units on Block E. And once you have agreed in concept, we would modify some exhibits in that agreement that you approved. So that is what we are hoping to do. This week we'll have an overview of what's being proposed, and then assuming that the council and the RDA are comfortable with that, you would approve that at your next meeting. So we would meet that first deadline milestone from the agreement. And with that, I will give the time over to Matt.
Thank you, Council. So, sorry for moving this from last week. We had a busy ICSC and got kind of held up in Las Vegas there. But hopefully, we're at a really fun stage in this project. We're now at the stage where we get to start opening a lot of fun restaurants and new retailers and things like that. So hopefully it's exciting for the community to be a part of that as we kind of move into this time. I think that the important changes that I think we're really talking about right now to the agreement we approved in the fall is a modification of the unit mix. If you remember, we did the agreement before based on the existing Grandeur Apartments project, which has a unit mix that favors slightly smaller units. They're roughly in their 750 or 730 square feet per unit. I think our new target is about 830 to 850 square feet per unit. The reason why I really wanted to come in before next Wednesday and make sure we're working with staff to do all this stuff is if there is any concern with how we'd be modifying the rent table and some of the agreement based on the new unit plan, I need to modify our unit mix and our site plan. So the three things that these exhibits that that we need to include in June are a rough depiction of the site plan, so the kind of the average building footprints of what the building is going to look like, and the units that are in that building, and then how that unit mix would then be bifurcated for affordability, similar to what we looked at when we looked at Block D, and how that and then it would be between staff and the market really as to which of those units would be part of the 100 affordable units. So any of those units could be affordable. We would be specifying which ones are 100, could be there as we go here. So I think that my hope today is to make sure that we're okay with the updated unit mix that we have right now. And then if that's the case, then we'll probably turn around tomorrow and submit the floor plans and the unit mix formally for the approval for next week. If we do need to modify back towards kind of the same unit mix and the same floor plans that we had on Block D, we'll resolve that just over the next week or two as we go from here. So, just to update, just in general, a couple of things I think are important here is that we did do the approval last fall because we because we didn't have Block E designed yet. We never went and requested the first $2.5 million. So that still is sitting with the RDA. If you remember, if here in June, if you decided to terminate, we would have to return that $2.5 million to you. And so it didn't make sense to me to go request it for a few months and then see if you guys were going to terminate and turn it back. And so I think as we move through June and are really diving into the design costs of this project, we will need to draw that to help kind of fund those design costs and as we're moving forward here. But the city still retains the right to terminate this agreement through December. So come December is when we'll be presenting to you the visualization of the building. So you'll see what the building is going to look like. You'll see, probably at least for sure finished design development plans, probably 30% CD plans. We'll see how far we can make it with finalizing our construction documents. But at that point in time, you'd be reviewing based on the approvals here in June for making sure that we haven't materially modified it. It's consistent with Block D in terms of amenities and livability, and we're creating the same kind of environment that we already had in Block D that we were looking at in Block E. So if you remember, the idea of these termination agreements was, hey, we know what we have in Block D, we like that agreement, but as we moved it over to Block E, how do we know for sure this new building is going to offer the same environment to affordable renters that Block D was going to provide, or the Grandeur was going to provide, excuse me. So you'll have that right to terminate there in December. Then moving forward from there, you still retain the rights to review and at the 7-year anniversary for whether or not this is working, whether or not the affordable housing agreement is working, at which point you can also terminate and receive back $5.5 million, which at the time was a calculation of the economic value of the whole agreement, inclusive, and that would come in 10 annual payments with 4.5% interest, just in that agreement, just to kind of remind you of what the city's options are and how you still have rights to terminate and how we're reviewing from here. But not to get lost in the weeds, but the hope here in June is that we can update those 3 exhibits, which again is a site plan, and then the exhibits showing kind of what the affordable rents would be, and then a slight update to the unit mix. So if you're looking at block D and E, our main intent with block E is block E is right on the traffic light. So block E, the street coming up from block E or Downtown Avenue leading straight towards Lifetime Fitness, is a really important retail street for us. And so we are actually going to overbuild the parking structure in block E to accommodate for a lot more retail parking. That would be probably in block F as we're under construction there. And these plans will make more sense as we continue to present this to you. I'm just at a high level, the bigger difference between block E and block D is there will be quite a bit more parking underneath the apartments. There still will be a floor that will be exclusive to the residential, but there will be probably 2 floors of parking that are open to retail shoppers. And so creating the right environment for that parking is really important for us. So bringing in natural light and airflow and really easy directionality of how you get in and out of that parking structure becomes a really big deal as we're going to have a lot of retail customers coming in that parking structure. The plan is not to have any condos on Block E, so this would just be only apartments, and it would be 1 story lower. So it would be 4 stories on top of the podium instead of 5 stories on top of the podium. The reason why we can do 1 more floor of parking is there was already a basement dug there back when they'd always had envisioned this being a place where they were going to build a bigger parking deck, and they meaning referring to the previous landowners. And so with that basement already dug, it's easier for us to come in and do a 3-level parking deck where otherwise you would do a 2-level deck similar to Block D. I think just to jump to accommodate your time, the big modification is really at the end of this package where we're showing the rent tables. In the previous Block D apartments project, we really didn't have 2 bedrooms and then a 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom unit that we're really looking at as a profile. I think that as in review of the market today, I really think there's a large demand for efficient 2-bedroom living where people can have an extra bedroom, whether or not it's a couple or whoever. If there's people that want to have a nice bigger master bedroom and a much bigger living space, and then a smaller secondary bedroom, home office, den, but still targeting that 1,000 square foot to 1,100 square foot target range for your 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom den, where in the marketplace right now, you usually are going out and you're just seeing 2-bedroom, double bathrooms, and they're quite a bit more expensive. So in Block D, we have 2-bedroom units, but they're all relatively big and expensive. By putting in some of these profiles of 2-bedroom dens and then smaller 2-bedroom units, I think we're better able to approach that market of where I think there's really is a gap right now in our marketplace. And so what we're doing from the approved unit mix that we looked at before is really moving from the studios and the smaller 1-bedrooms towards that smaller 2-bedroom to 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom, 2-bedroom dual bathroom units. And again, you'll see these floor plans probably tomorrow if we're okay with this, to kind of see what those are. But really, it's a transition to bigger units. And then we're removing a bunch of the more premium units that we had previously in the other buildings, so the large 1-bedrooms that we had in the other building. And so my problem with that is that as we were trying to profile those units to our rent table, which is on page 9, I think. The issue was I didn't have a place to put them. We didn't really have a profile for where those efficient units go. And I think it's 2 more down if you can. I don't know who's driving. There we go. So what I'm proposing, the modification to this schedule, this would be the big modification to the agreement. We'd be adding a 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom unit concept that's really sized the same as like a 2 bedroom. It's just a standard 2 bedroom unit, but it's really designed to hit a very different customer. It's designed for an empty nester or young, professional or somebody with a young, it's not designed for roommates. It's really not. It's a very different rent profile for that unit. Um, and then really targeting the inside corner units that are just much more efficient. The inside corner units are the units that where kind of where like the elbow, like facing inside of the elbow. It's hard unless you actually go tour if you're interested to see how unique those units are. But they're actually some of our most popular units that we create. But where we had them before was really hard to show them as affordable in the Block D pro forma. So what you're seeing is actually a pretty big reduction to what like the affordable rent would have been for some of those 2 bedroom affordable units, the corner units, and the corner plus units, and then a slight modification to some of those other units. So in the end, it gets us to the same place in terms of how we're allocating, how many people can live, and how the unit allocations are going to work. But this better matches that larger unit profile, if that makes sense. And and so where we are right now is we have a pretty good rough design of what we think fits and how we'd extrude this building. Assuming we'd be okay with that, we would submit the 3 exhibits to you for next week's approval for the modification to our agreement. From there, we'd go off to the races in terms of really designing and moving past the schematic design phase into design development, where we'd be onboarding a lot of our third parties and meaning structural and mechanical and all the different subs. And so I'm really excited about the project. I think it's coming together really well. I think it's going to shape up the whole approach that we have for Rodeo Drive. I think that having that new traffic light and that last bridge kind of finishing at the same time is going to really be pretty fantastic for us as we finalize over the next couple of years, making the whole project really feel alive and full. So I know I ran through this really quickly. I hope. I don't think it's a huge amendment. I was hoping, I don't know if there's any questions on kind of how this works.
Yeah, I don't see it as a huge change, and as long as we're not inhibiting our ability in any way to meet the requirement of the RDA of providing, and I presume that the rent tables that there are provisions for the 80% AMI for square footage X versus square footage Y, or bedroom count X versus bedroom count Y, and and that there's not any sort of inherent movement away toward where 80% AMI has significant demand for these wed bedrooms and not for the 2 bedrooms, that we're constraining ourselves somehow. But I doubt there's any. It doesn't feel that way to me that there's any market information out there that would suggest that we're moving or somehow betraying what we're trying to accomplish. It seems to me that having more of the larger units with a 2 versus 1, that creates a better mix overall, both from a market standpoint and from a housing 80% AMI market housing. Would you agree with that, John? If I was completely unclear and rambling.
No, that's a good explanation of it, especially for the longevity, sustainability of keeping those units rented for the long term. Yes.
I think that's usually the bigger issue is the smaller units find people, but there's a lot of turnover.
Right.
People who live in those units, and keep in mind if we are having a hard time with with whatever our unit mix is, there still is the provision that if we do lease these at market, we still return whatever the excess is back to the RDA for them to use towards other affordability in whatever way they see fit. So I'm hoping that this isn't a huge change to the overall program, but
I don't sense that this is a huge deal. I'm more concerned about are we hitting the timelines so that we don't get ourselves in a jam with the use of those, that running up against the expiration date that's now thrust upon both of us by the legislature to make use of those funds and deliver housing in a timely fashion. So is there any indication? I mean, I have no desire to pull back the funds. I want them to be used for the purpose for which we've dedicated those funds, and I'm delighted to have them used in the Holladay Hills project. So yeah, my larger concern is, are we on track?
Yeah, and from my perspective, absolutely, we're hitting this first milestone that we had anticipated as part of this agreement. And it sounds like we're on track to hit
Yeah.
the next one in
So the
December.
deliverables we've seen so far, or that we've been promised, and we still feel like we're on track without too much trouble. Good.
Great. I think I'm good.
Anyone else?
That's good.
So next I'll get the updated exhibits to you here probably tomorrow morning, and then we'll hope next week we'll look at those the updated exhibits and move forward from there. But
Great.
it'll be fun. Thank you, Rex, for your time.
Thanks, Mac.
Mayor, I'm wondering if we could take item E out of order so that people who are here could leave after their presentation before we do enter into the discussion on the public hearings.
Yeah, let's see. Was there anyone here who was hanging around for those public hearings?
I think they all left.
I think they're all gone. Okay, I think that's a great suggestion. Do we need a motion, or can we just share his privilege this time? Okay, given that, let's move toward the tentative budget item to E, and then we'll afterwards circle back to B, C, and D without objection. Given that, we'll go to Chief Oil. That's in item E.
Well, good evening again, and thank you for this opportunity. I've asked Chief Mazuryn to join me up here, as this is also some of the oversight of the budget for the Unified Police Department. Just to kind of, I'll hit this at a really high level here for you guys. So you guys know the UPD board adopted the budget on May 21st, just a couple of weeks ago. The UPD board had given us an overall direction of 3.5% with the goal of hitting it less than 3%, which is, you will see that we have done. This budget includes an overall increase to UPD at only 1.39%. That includes these key points. There was a 2.5% COLA for all employees, 12% increase in health insurance premiums. There was a civilian market study wage increases, a new lieutenant watch commander, a new officer for our crash analysis and reconstruction team, the reorganization of the administration, human resources, and professional standards division, and then some additional revenues, which was huge for us this year, that came in from Granite School District that increased about $15,000 per SRO that we're getting for each of our schools, which translates here into Holladay for each of the 3 schools that we have SROs at Olympus High, Olympus Junior, and then Bonneville. We're also seeing that $15,000 increase, which again comes at a savings to you here in the city.
That comes with an escalator too, right? With the next few
Yes.
years? Yeah.
So $2,500 every year until it hits the $70,000 cap is where it's at. So we were at $45,000 last year. It's starting this year at $60,000 reimbursement, and then $2,500 every year until it hits the $70,000. Here specifically for the city, your overall increase was 2.31%, and that included not only those things that I'd mentioned above, as far because those are all falling under shared services and then your individual employees, but there is a new sergeant that's going to be here in the city that's going to oversee our traffic officers that we're sharing with the city of Mill Creek at a 33% share rate. They're covering 66, and we've got 33% of that cost. There's some minimal day-to-day operational budget increases, and then, as I mentioned, there's those new revenues that came in from Granite School District. If you'll scroll to that next slide, the one that has the org chart on there. I've circled everything to try and simplify this. Everything that's circled in purple is your shared services. Those are the things that all of our partners share on a day-to-day basis, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. And then what's circled in red are your precinct-specific costs that we'll show you on the budget to try and simplify that. If you'll scroll to the next slide, this is your direct precinct staffing here, and this is where we talked a little bit about in the quarterly report. As your precinct chief, you guys are covering 75% of me. Brighton is covering 20%. And then LDS Hospital covers 5%. You can see the breakdown all the way down. Lieutenant Ackerman, you're paying 60% of him, 20% to Brighton, 20% to LDS Hospital because he's acting as their direct supervisor there for those officers that are there. The office coordinator, the victim, the detective sergeant that's shared between you and Brighton. And then we have our 5 patrol officers that supervise each of your patrol shifts that's shared with Mill Creek at that same rate we mentioned for the traffic sergeant, 66%, and then 33% here in Holladay. And then you have a total of 25 and a half direct officers that are here every single day. They include your patrol officers, detectives, traffic officers, your bailiff, code enforcement, school resource officers, and then one half of a directed enforcement unit officer that's shared between Mill Creek and Holladay. Between Mill Creek and Midvale as well. So for a grand total of direct precinct officers that you have and members, including our civilian members at 1.5, is 30.58. Obviously, it's because of the breakdown of percentages that are in there is why it's a 30.58. We don't have 0.58 of an officer here. So anyway, if you'll scroll to the next slide there. So again, going into the overall budget for the organization, what's again circled in red is your precinct direct costs. So this specific year, you're looking at precinct specifically is $5.655 million for the precinct operations, which is up about $165,000 from last year. And then your shared service costs are just over $3 million for a grand total of $8.5 million this year. That again equates to the 2.31% increase. And then we'll talk about on the next slide where it talks about that 11.41% increase in shared service, or not increase, but 11.41% is your cost to shared services. So on this slide right here, for those that aren't familiar with it, we have a formula that every partner uses for shared services. It's that you probably heard us use the 70-20-10 formula. 70% of that formula are the cases that are assigned, and I used in my quarterly report the cases that you see month to month, and that's what ultimately plays into that portion of it. 20% is your population, and then 10% is taxable value. We use that for everybody. Last year, your overall percentage of shared service, and then if you look at all the partners, so you'll see Holladay on there was 11.52, we'll get back to that. Midvale, the 24%, Mill Creek, 28%, and then the Slavisa, all the other entities were 35% for a grand total of the 100% of shared services. But if you'll scroll over to the right for me, the end of that slide, you'll see that maybe as we get, there we go. So you can see now that we've included Intermountain Health or LDS Hospital, and you can see that your percentage of shared services dropped from 11.52% to 11.41%. They pay, with just the two officers that are over there and the formula that's used for those officers, they pay about 1% of shared services. So it comes at a cost savings to everybody in the organization across the board. Quick lesson on the shared services formula there, but again, that came at a direct cost savings to you guys, which ultimately equated to only the 2.31% increase this year. And anything you want to add to that budget presentation, sir?
So can you go back to the organization chart real quick? I just want to point something out, maybe look at it from a different perspective. So one of the most important things that I do along with Chief Hoyle is create this budget and try to create the most effective, efficient, strongest budget that we can do that saves money but doesn't hurt your service. And so we started this process in February, and during that time up till now, I worked very closely with all of the chiefs and worked very closely with Chief Hoyle to make sure Holladay got a budget that was really good. And by the way, when we were in the police academy, do you ever remember like dreaming about building budgets? And
no, not at all.
I just realized that, like, what happened to us? Anyway, but on the left there in the yellow, I want to point out there's other chiefs and administrators, our legal, our CFO, that they also influence your budget. And so they work very hard to make sure that, you know, along with me and Chief Hoyle and everybody else, your shared services command is working very hard to make sure that your budget works. And so sometimes we don't recognize that. Many of you may not know some of them. I know the mayor's probably seen all of them at the board meetings, but I think that's another thing that you have to be aware of, is there's a lot of people that are working to make sure you have a budget that works and works well. So I just want to point that out. We don't talk about that enough.
Yeah, I mean, the whole a concept that really appeals to me with UPD is on that left side of the budget is if you were to compare us with another city who has their own police service, that's the economy of scale we're getting in these specialized, not just specialized police service, but in like records management and HR, tech services. Those are the things that they are specialized for police services that we don't have to have in house. And our police line item in our budget includes the whole kitchen sink of not just the precinct and the patrol and the specialized stuff like SWAT and violent crimes investigations, major uh, auto accident investigations, which can suck up a whole lot of resources if you're having to do that in house. That's the great value in the economy of scale by belonging to this regional organization and also having a in the 70-20-10 split. It's very advantageous to Holladay. Our tax base relative to our utilization, we get great service from a great larger organization with those economies of scale, with those specialized resources, but at a very, very reasonable cost. And so we get great service as a result and great value. So, but this particular budget year, particularly, was, I think, a great victory. Those of us who've been on the council for the last several cycles know that 2.31 relative to previous years is a screaming deal because that number doesn't only represent inflation, it can also represent growth in services just from whether it's population growth. And also other communities have more population growth than we do. And so those other communities tend to be supporting some of the growth in UPD more so than we do, but we still get the benefit of it. And I hate to talk about that too much in public because it's great for us, but I hate for someone else to screw up our deal. It's a good deal. So just between us chickens, it's an awesome deal. So thanks very much, Chiefs.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, Captain Brown. Similar speech for UFA regarding
All right,
regional.
Mayor and Council, thanks for having me back again. So
UFA beat you again though, UPD 231 to 211.
yeah,
you can't win.
we had to cut a lot of things this year for to get down below UPD. I'm just kidding. So this first slide, this is just the nuts and bolts, the biggest part, right? So this is how much is leaving the city of Holladay. Again, the way UFA is you either have a three-handed or four-handed apparatus, and that's how it's charged. We'll break it down a little bit later on, and so you can see. Oh, go back a little bit. Yep, right there. So you can see the actual year-over-year cost increase, and then the 2.11% increase, which is we'll show it a little bit further, but it's the lowest rate among all UFA municipalities for this fiscal year. And on the bottom, you can see that that includes an implied fund balance credit of 100,000 and some change from the previous fiscal year. And again, I say it before, so whatever there's under expended, we don't just spend it, we give it back to the cities. So here is a breakdown, and you can kind of see where everybody else is. So there's the four direct members, and then there's the Unified Fire Service areas. So you can kind of see. So Holladay right there has a number of stations with first due. So that means there's 4 stations that own a piece of Holladay, where if a call goes in, they're the first ones there if they're in service. So there's 4 stations where the proportion of the Holladay pays is 1.03. And then you can see the percentage of the total member fee of UFA, the member fee, your increase, and then the cost increase you can see. So that you can see the reason that the differences in the Harriman Cottonwood Heights is they do a 3-year rolling average of the call volume, and we'll get into another slide, but that's how you're built. Is a 3-year call average. So if let's say if Holladay only responded in their own station, there was no cost sharing, then it would be a little different. But because they share with the other stations, and we'll get into that a little bit. And just UFSA, the reason it has a large increase is they added a fire engine incurrence last November, so that kind of leaked over into this fiscal year, which is why they're much higher. Okay, next slide. So this is kind of a good a map of kind of how the billing works. So you can see Holladay 104 owns a little section of Mill Creek there in that northwest corner. Station 112 owns a little bit of Holladay right there in the northeast corner. And actually, they also own that little section, little Lego looking section there on the southeast corner because they can get there faster than anybody else getting on 215. 116 owns a little portion of Holladay, and 110 owns a little portion of Holladay. So that's what's great is that you're honestly out of all the cities in UFA, Holladay has probably the most advantageous as the station's right in the middle, and then you're bordered by other UFA stations where they can provide the best service and get there as fast as opposed to if you're your own city and surrounded by other ones that the 104 would have to go further out and extend their response times. And then here's the algorithm as far as in the numbers, so you can see how they all go in and their algorithm. So Station 104, 66% of their calls are in Holladay, 33% of their calls are in that section of Mill Creek right over there. And the same correspondingly, you can see Station 110, Station 112, and 116, the percentage of their calls in their city, in Holladay, and then UFSA, which all that put together is how the cost sharing goes. Next slide. Here's the budget drivers for this year. So they had a 3.6% COLA across the board, plus some minor targeted market adjustments. There's a fire training facility that we are pursuing, which is going to be, for those, I think 3 or 4 of you have been to fire school. So we are the biggest fire department in the state, and our fire training facility is, it's a double wide trailer. I mean, I'm just straight up, it's a double wide trailer. So one of Chief Burchett's things he's been working on for years and years is a fire training facility that will be put out there that hopefully, I won't get into it, but probably neighboring fire departments we use, and it's going to be just a great state-of-the-art facility. The capital fund transfer. So again, when we do our capital purchases, we have a plan. We always have 3 9-year bonds that we do. So and when one rolls off, another one comes on. This is how we buy our fire apparatus and all of our equipment. So it makes the costs predictable. And so that's kind of like a down payment to try to keep that capital fund transfer as steady as possible, so we can budget, and therefore the cities can budget appropriately. And then our health insurance went up, and that's actually a big win for us because they came back a lot higher than that. We, not to get into the nuts and bolts, we did go from a $1,000 deductible with a $500 health reimbursement account to a $2,000 deductible with a $1,000 health reimbursement account in order to keep that kind of steady. And then the good side, URS rate decrease, our stress test cuts, which again, Chief Burchett does. This is what he does every year. He has every division supervisor. He says, hey, if you have to cut 10%, what can you cut? And then they go about and look at it, and then they see what they can live with and what they can't live with. Increase ambulance revenue, and then the warehouse payoff. I don't know if anybody's ever been. We have a large logistics warehouse, which is where we store all of our things, where we have our mechanic shop. Our big logistics warehouse is in West Jordan, which I can't remember exactly when we purchased. I think we purchased it in 2010 or around there, but that finally got paid off. And then then that equals the final increase of 2.11%. Here, I'm not going to go over it, but this is just an example of our 9-year financing. Again, we have three going on all the time. So every 3 years, one will roll off, or when one rolls off, another one will come on. And again, this is how we keep everything steady as far as purchasing. So, if you're a small department, you have to come up, we have to buy a $1.4 million tiller truck this year. It's a big hit. So it's nice that we have a rotation plan where we buy 3 or 4 every time we get one of these bonds, and then we rotate them accordingly. So again, it keeps the member fees predictable for all the cities. And this, so you can look at this, I think it's interesting because you can see how much all this stuff is, and it's ridiculously expensive. I think anything fire and police, they have a big markup on it. I don't know. Okay, you can
The
just.
great thing about that is just how it evens out our costs over the years, because we have big purchases, but this financing plan was a great innovation over the last several years, and it's really calmed down wild budget swings.
I've told this story before, and I apologize, but in 2007 we bought, I think, like 16 fire engines at one time, and then they all started breaking down at the exact same time, and then it became a disaster. So they all came off warranty at the same time. So we went from a big cost to no cost for a few years, and then big cost again. And so I think that was the the beginning of this capital replacement plan that we did, was that it was too hard to maintain. Okay, you can go to the next one. And this is just a slide which kind of just shows the wage competitiveness, the COLA, the debt service, the healthcare costs, and some of these others, just a little narrative of what we talked about earlier. Okay. So I remember last year, Holly told me, and she's not here, but she's like, I always learn something when you come up there. So I was like, what can I put in here that might be educational, that's kind of different? So this is our ambulance transport revenue. So, and if you take a look at it, so the Medicare and Medicaid, they're by far the number one users of our ambulance service, but you can see that how much is collected. And so it's just kind of interesting. Again, so the prices are set by the state. We don't set the prices for ambulance service. It's set by the state. But I just thought it was an interesting thing. This is just kind of a gee whiz, but that how little of our ambulance billing is actually recovered. And then of course with Medicare and Medicaid, whatever they don't pay is just written off, and there's no recourse, which I don't think there should be. But so I just thought that was kind of an interesting slide.
So yeah, the bottom line is we do subsidize our citizens' use of emergency ambulances. That's not, it is, patients do get billed, but there's still a significant subsidy.
100%.
And
Yes.
the only thing and that doesn't bother me at all. The only thing that concerns me sometimes, it would be like how many out of region customers are we serving who aren't contributing through property tax, sales tax, etc. Like for instance, if we aren't collecting anything for emergency services for heavy tourist spots, ski resorts, etc., how much are we subsidizing those? But in terms of our own community and our neighboring communities, because neighboring communities also serve our citizens, the fact that it's subsidized and not 100% collected, hey, there's all kinds of fire service that we're not paying for directly. Your house catches on fire, you're not sent a bill. You are sent a bill for ambulance use, but the fact that it ends up being subsidized to a degree doesn't bother me at all.
And just so everybody, this is kind of another gee whiz thing. There's only a bill if you get transported. So if you call that's what I tell people: call 911. Have them come assess you if you feel weird. There's no bill for us to come to the house. You only get a bill if you get transported by ambulance. So that is one misconception that people have. So yeah, I always recommend calling. Yeah, that's part of it. And here's just the breakdown of where the money is. So operations, that's the people on the fire engine. That's your fire engine, and this all adds up to your 3.2 million. The capital transfer fund, that's your capital plan that we pay every year for the new fire engines and everything, and logistics, fuel, repairs, all these things, maintaining the stations, and then just the breakdown of admin, IT, fire prevention, EMS, fire training, and then the other things. That's your cost breakdown. And then this, in summary, this your 3.2. This is just everything, and then you get access to the 9-year replacement plan and the built-in special divisions that come from an $85 million department with wildland teams. Like again, we talked about our fuels crew. That's the only fuels crew in the Salt Lake County, and and we're the only one that has a dedicated wildland team and things like that. So. Any questions? Okay.
Thanks for beating UPD again on that number. Okay, let's proceed then with the tree committee.
Hold on, you stay right here. Before I give our fantastic chair of the tree committee opportunity to present next year's anticipated events, just wanted to give an overview of what Christian has presented in the budget for the tree committee next upcoming fiscal year. In 2007, Councilmember Pat Pignanelli and I sat down and talked about why Tooele is a tree city and Holladay isn't. And so we came up quickly with a plan to ensure that every year Holladay becomes recertifies as a tree city. there are four primary objectives from the National Arbor Day Foundation in order to recertify. Budgetary is one of them. Tree ordinance is one of them. Obviously, observance of Arbor Day is a primary requirement. However, the cities must also operate a tree board for outreach and education. And we've been lucky to have great tree committee for over the past 17 years now. And Megan is your new chair of that committee, so I'm going to allow her to present what they have in plan for you and the community next year.
Right. Thanks, John. Like you said, my name is Megan McGilvery. I live in District 3, and I am here tonight on behalf of the Tree Committee. So thanks again for your time and allowing us to share a little bit. So you kind of already addressed a lot of this, but really, what does the tree committee exist for? If we want to boil it down to a few points, it's encouraging that maintenance and preservation of the urban canopy that Holladay is so known for. Even tonight, we heard some folks in the citizen comments talking about why they moved here and the green spaces and how much they love it. So we try to promote that. Also, and we'll talk a lot about this tonight, but administering different programs. Some of those required as part of the Tree City certification. Some of them are just really great opportunities to connect with the community and are really appreciated by our citizens. And then the last point is providing recommendations for planting of different species, especially on city property. I could not show my face in another tree committee meeting without saying that we have so many enthusiastic members who are dying to help with the Spring Lane project. So that's the last thing I want to say about that. And I will leave that there. But again, we really, different expertise on the team, both novice and folks who are really passionate about certain types of trees and vegetation, as well as, people have professional certifications. So we're here in service to the community. So as far as what our vision is, we really do not want to be the tree police. I was going to make a joke, but my friends from EPD just all left. So that's really not our role. We're not trying to come in and tell people what they are and not doing wrong, but instead provide the educational resources to folks to make the right decisions and to help promote that urban canopy that we do have through their own properties. We also do a number of tree-related service projects. This just recently was a photo from our Arbor Day celebration at Wasatch Charter School. So we were able to plant 3 gorgeous ginkgo trees right along Murray Holladay Road that will not only be beneficial to the school and the students, but to the community as well as beautifying that property. We also, as John mentioned, have a number of responsibilities to keep that Tree City USA certification, so we manage those. And then really helping to advocate as much as we can, whether that is policies or programs that are going to help to preserve the beautiful city that we live in Holladay. So some quick highlights from what we did with our resources this past year in fiscal year 26. We were able to execute 3, we call them tree talks. As a quick plug, they're on Saturdays, second Saturday of every month. In the spring and the fall at the Holladay Library, we present on a number of tree-related topics, tree care topics. They're not all just talking about trees. You can see in the upper left corner there, we actually had a local artist come who owns Community Wood Shop out in Midvale and talk about the emotional impact of trees and feature his artwork and what can be done with trees when they've reached the end of their life cycle. So it really does run the gamut. Second is we do tree plantings. So we did 3 different plantings this past year. And some examples of that, as I mentioned, are, what we do with the different elementary schools. We also planted a number of trees in partnership with Tree Utah at the Holladay City Library, and they're thriving. We're very happy about that. I think it was 8 total. Don't quote me on that. And we planted some beautiful trees to honor both the city of Holladay as well as some members who've done a lot for the committee when it was originally founded in Knudsen Park. One program I really want to highlight is our voucher program. So this is essentially a program, if you're not familiar with it, where we provide, we have an ongoing fund for the residents of Holladay to apply to, and that's really to plant new trees or to maybe replace a tree that has died on their property to help offset the cost, because we know they can be pretty substantial. I thought this was one of the coolest programs I'd ever heard of when I moved to Holladay, and I was a little disappointed to find out we had an average of 3 to 4 applicants per year. So really underutilized. We've made a concerted effort since February, March of this year to publicize that program, and we've had 27 applications in the last 90 days. So we're really happy with that result. Obviously, you know, 27 is fantastic. We'd love to have double that, but just really showing what happens when we can like literally refresh the program applications. We brought in 3 additional nursery partners, so there's more diversity from what people can pick from. And we've had just amazing positive responses. People are so excited to get their tree vouchers in the mail. And then last but not least, Arbor Day celebration. Like I said, this was really fun. We had about 60 fifth graders from 3 different classes who participated in that with us. They named the trees. They sang songs to the trees, and it was just a really great experience. And we're happy with how that turned out this year. So lastly, looking at what we're going to do next year for 2027, we will bring back our tree giveaway. We're looking at mid-May for that. That's going to be about $25,000 budget, which will get us approximately 300 trees to give away. We are looking this year to potentially increase that funding through private donations from local businesses, working with the Holladay Business Council. Due to the drought and the just like lack of any water that we seem to have this winter, we do anticipate that people are going to lose more trees. So I think there's an opportunity there for us to not only provide additional like volume of the trees, but also to bring in and drive awareness with our local partners. Tree voucher program, like I said, super popular. We were actually just in our tree committee meeting prior to this, and both thrilled and floored by, okay, well, what do we do? What do we do now with this? We did increase the voucher value, just full transparency, from $100 per person to $125. I don't believe it had ever been increased since it was introduced. So, you guys manage much more interesting budgets than this, and I don't need to talk to you about inflation. So we'll just leave it at that. We have had a lot of success with the tree talks. We've actually had about a 30% increase in attendance in those, as well as some requests to place that content online for people who are not able to attend. And we'll continue with that. We've allocated a small amount just to bring in some of our big name speakers, as we like to call them. These folks are professionals. They charge for their services. It's pretty nominal, but we want to make sure that we are appropriately compensating them for their time. Arbor Day celebration, I already mentioned. And then a non-cost associated priority for us for next year is really just driving engagement and bringing everything digital. So one of the things we realized through both the tree giveaway as well as the voucher program is we had a lot of people saying, I never heard about this. I didn't know about this. Like, how do I find it? Oh, I can't even find it on the city's website. So we would really like to drive that home through 3 points. One is increasing our social media presence, and especially during the key tree and environmental related months. So if we talk about April, around Arbor Day, things like that. Some of our other communities close to us have a increased citizen participation through things like Tree of the Month programs, just highlighting something that people are very proud of. So we're looking to do a few things like that, as well as potentially partnering with Happy Healthy Holladay to do forest bathing at Knudsen Park, to really highlight the assets that Holladay has. And then the not quite as interesting part of it, but really I talked about a second ago, is that online integration of forms. So we find that if people can get the information to participate in these programs on a much easier basis than like physically coming to City Hall asking for a form, returning it to City Hall. We're just going to see more people participating in it. So that is the goal. So with that, I just want to say thank you again for your support of the tree committee. And yeah, we're really excited to see everyone next year at the giveaway. Questions?
On that last slide about the digitization, online forms, I presume all that stuff happens through the city online infrastructure, and that there's no issue with that expansion from the tree committee. Everybody's on board with that.
No, in fact, that is also a legislative requirement that by, I believe it's July 1st of 2027, all our forms be available digitally. So you'll be hearing a lot more about that in this context and others.
So tree committee's on the cutting edge of that.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
Yeah. And it was actually interesting. I did a survey of all the other kind of tree voucher equivalent programs that exist in let's call it extended Salt Lake County. And we were only one of 2 cities that didn't do it online. So yeah, I think there's just an opportunity there.
Cutting edge for Holladay.
Sorry? Oh yeah, cutting edge for Holladay. Yeah, yeah. So I'm glad to see that, Gina and team are all over it as well.
Thank you.
Yes.
I just want to thank Megan. She's kind of a new chair of the committee and has brought a lot of energy and new ideas and organization to the committee, and she's been really great.
Oh, thanks, Matt. We really appreciate your support and John's as well. And, we're just passionate, excited tree people. So, cool. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Okay, non-departmental. That seems kind of nondescript. Whatever, non-departmental. You can throw in the unresolved issues budget changes too if you like.
Perfect. I feel like a lot of my work's already done with
We do
the
too.
UFA and the tree committee, so I'll keep it quick for sure. So tonight we're going to cover UPD, UFA, LBA, non-departmental, the tree committee, any unresolved issues, new growth, and then any final balancing changes. So starting off with UPD, Chief Hoyle covered a lot of information. I just wanted to give you some context as it relates specifically to our budget. The fiscal year 2026 budget was $8.239 million. And an important bit of context with that is last year we did use $100,000 of precinct fund balance. So when you add that back into the fiscal year 2026 budget, we're at $8.3 million. And then the 2.31% increase that Chief Hoyle had mentioned is taking into account that 8.3 million rather than the actual amount that the city recognized in fiscal year 26. Is that clear? Okay. And then in addition to that, there is a reallocation of the portion of the UPD budget that goes to the Justice Court. I previously mentioned 80% goes back to the Justice Court and is shared with our court partners, Mill Creek and Conwood Heights. So moving on from there, oh, we skipped a slide. There we go. So I just wanted to give some historical context to the increases to the UPD contract. And then again, this is within the context of this specific line item of our budget. So this isn't taking into account the precinct use of fund balance or changes in allocation of that court bailiff. You can see we did have a pretty significant increase back in 2022, and then it came down, and then it went back up. Just as some general information, the average of those last 7 years we've seen is a 7.92% increase. And you can just see how that's changed over time. So we can move on from that. UFA, Captain Brown covered a lot of this information, so I'll just keep it really brief. 2.11% increase, the total budget amount, $3,267,000. We can go on from there. Okay, on to the local building authority. So I put this top graph together just to give some additional context with the LBA bond that we issued, and I think we've talked about this a lot of times, but I thought this really very clearly illustrated how the debt service is set up with the local building authority and how it relates to the city. So the local building authority pays the debt, but the general fund transfers every single year for the debt service into the local building authority. So it's transferred in and then it's paid by the local building authority. That red section you can see on the far left, that is the city's 2020 sales tax bond, and you can see it starts to drop off in 2032. That blue section is the interest on the LBA bond. The green section is the principal. You can see as that drops off, the 2025 LBA bond ramps up. So that was done to make the cash impact easier year over year, but that's just to visualize it for the council. And the next bit is that lower section. You can see the City Hall refurbishment and renovation. Currently, the budget on that is $7,893,000. And it's just some information to the council. We fully anticipate that we're going to be doing a budget amendment for the LBA relatively early in fiscal year 2027. The budget that's currently there is pending change just because we've just started opening up the walls of the city hall, and we're not necessarily sure, what we're going to find. Is there asbestos? Are we going to need to move walls? Is there utilities in places we weren't necessarily expecting? So we're fully anticipating there's going to be amendment pretty early on as we get started on this project. Additionally, Spring Lane, those are conversations that are coming in the very short term as we start to get a better sense of the scope of the project and the things we're going to try to do with it, and the decisions we're going to bring to the council for decision. Okay, RDA. So I just wanted to give some general information on the RDA budget. Generally, year to year, the RDA's budget doesn't change that much. If you look at that middle section, you can see in fiscal year 2026, there's that we're looking at fund balance in that section. You can see a reduction in fund balance of 1.55 million in 2026. That is the distribution for the affordable housing, which the Woodburys have just recently talked about. And then you can see in 2027, we have a contribution to fund balance again. Just below that, you'll see an interesting piece of information as well. This is the, if you look at that top section, you can see the fiscal year 2024 unassigned fund balance. We actually had a negative unassigned fund balance, which is not what you want. But in 2025, we brought that down to 835,000. And I'm anticipating in fiscal year 26, we'll be back to a positive unassigned fund balance. The total fund balance isn't negative, it's just the unassigned portion of that total fund balance is negative. So there's a large portion that is specifically associated with a loan which was given by the Capital Projects Fund to the RDA, and that loan is being paid back and the cash is being generated to recoup the Capital Projects Fund. That's it on the RDA, unless any questions. Okay, so moving on to non-departmental. So this captures a lot of those unique line items within the budget, things that don't really fit anywhere else. The first one I wanted to talk about is the payment to Salt Lake County. This is for a bit of debt which we had issued back, the county had issued to us. And this was the final balloon payment for that debt of $150,000. That happened last year. So this year we are reducing that payment and we no longer have it. So that was $150,000 that the city then had freed up. Special elections, this was our mayoral election, which happened in 2026. So we don't have any elections in 2027. So we have that budget that's freed up. Public health programs. So this is the Happy Healthy Holiday initiative. In 2026, we had budgeted a large portion of the Happy Healthy Holiday grant to be spent specifically within the general fund. And in 2027, we're anticipating spending some within the general fund, but then we're also spending some within the grants fund. Specifically, we're looking at some gazebo improvements at our City Hall site. And then there's some other programs that are in the arts fund as well. So we're looking at new avenues of ways to proactively spend the Happy Healthy Holiday grant. Moving on from there, we have a reduction in the Christmas tree lighting in the village. This was actually the purchase of the Christmas tree that we had in the village. So this year we're not purchasing a whole new tree. We're reusing the one that we purchased. We also have a transfer to capital projects, which we're reducing that by $635,000. A piece of that is just year to year based on the projects and the needs within the capital projects fund, and also the availability of cash within the general fund. As I'd mentioned in the budget amendment, there's a portion that we're transferring in fiscal year 26, which reduced the need for a transfer in 2027.
Is that related to 1.2 for Highland Drive?
The 1.2 was just if there's additional fund balance available. I'm speaking about, I believe it was 59,000. I left that note
Okay.
back there, but it was the portion that was for unrestricted capital projects and the vehicle replacement. So we transferred that cash in 2026 with the understanding that in 2027 we would expend it out of fund balance of the capital projects fund. Okay, moving on from there. Sorry, I lost my train of thought a little bit.
So now we get to the increases.
Right. Yeah. So now we're on to the increases. This was the first one is the transfer to the Arts Fund for programming, which I previously mentioned when we talked about the Arts Council. This is just the other side of that discussion. This is the transfer out of the general fund, whereas it was the transfer in when we talked about it within the context of the Arts Fund. The 4th of July celebration, you'll notice an increase of about 20,000. That is primarily associated with a change from doing a fireworks show versus doing a drone show in 2027. The move to a drone show, it is a more expensive, but also a little safer as it comes to fire safety. And I believe that was under sort of council direction that we moved in that way. Next, the tree committee, and I'll talk about the tree committee a little bit more, but every other year we do a tree giveaway. This is a tree giveaway year, so the budget increases for the giveaway, and then next year it would be back down to around, I believe it's 3,500. So it's usually around 3,500, and then it jumps up to about 28,000 when we do those tree giveaway years.
Christian,
yeah.
on the tree committee line, we just heard this report about a pretty dramatic increase in the tree voucher program. Is there going to be some flexibility to deal with that if that kind of growth continues?
I'll have to get with John and talk about that more specifically, but I believe this budget does factor in that increased voucher giveaway. But I'll get with John and I'll get you that information.
Thank you.
And then the construction site utilities. This is one that I previously mentioned where we planned for it to be in the LBA. Now it's within the non-departmental department of the general fund. Then we have the temporary city hall rent, and then we have the transfer to LBA. That's the transfer for the debt service payment. You'll notice that's an increase. In 2026, it was around 200,000 because it was a partial year. In 2027, it's a full year, so it's an increase of about 291,000 to around a total payment of around 490,000. And then, and you'll notice, I'm going back a little bit to the rent of the temporary city hall. You'll notice that's an increase of 150,000. But when I had discussed it in the changes since tentative, the total budget is 212. So this schedule is showing the tentative budget, and then the changes since tentative is an adjustment to this. So, and I'll cover that at the end as well. So. And then miscellaneous changes of $15,000 or less of 64,000. So there were some increases and some decreases, but they net out to around 6,400 and they're $15,000 or less. And then this little graphic just shows a breakdown of those expenses. Primarily, it's the contributions and transfers for debt service primarily. And you'll notice there's not. The blue section is quite large. It's because the debt service payments from year to year that are for like our 2020 bond or our 2022 bond don't change that drastically from year to year. So it doesn't pop up as a change from year to year because it's a relatively similar amount from year to year. But it is a larger piece of the overall budget.
Before we move on,
yeah,
just one minor correction. The July 4th drone show was more of a city manager mayor decision. So I'll take the heat for that. If you get the primary role for that, we had to make a decision in the March time frame because that's when you have to make a reservation either for a fireworks provider or a drone show provider. Otherwise you don't get either if you don't make your reservation early enough. The decision was made primarily not because of the drought conditions so much as being adjacent to an active construction site. The project hadn't even started yet, so we didn't even know necessarily what the unknowns were about what the condition of the construction site would be in July. At the time, we had to make a decision in March, and but also in addition to the drought situation, there was an opportunity to try something different this one year, And if we were going to try something new, we didn't want to do a lame drone show. And so I suggested it'd be okay to maybe up the budget for 4th of July since it's so important to our community to do something still nice. We're still likely going to get, in fact, we've heard some pushback already about it. But the decision was not made because of anti-fireworks sentiment so much as this the unknown risks of being adjacent to an active construction project, whether or not they'd have trucks out there with epoxy in them for putting stuff. Who knows? And so it was those unknown factors that led to our decision to play it safe this year. But also, then we'll have an opportunity to do something different and new. Whether we do it again in the future for July 4th is one question, but also how enjoyable it is if we decide to maybe add a drone show, which is far less expensive if it's not on July 4th, but maybe do it on, Blue Moon Festival or something. But at least we can get some public feedback about whether or not anybody thinks a drone show is cool or not, or if it's a big bust. But the primary driver was just the safety considerations relative to the active construction side. But that was on Gina and I, so we'll take the hit for that.
Thank you for that extra context. Were there any other questions on the non-departmental budget? Okay, great. Okay, moving on to the tree committee, which I've covered a lot of this information already. You can see this is just to illustrate what I'd previously mentioned, where we'll have a year where we do a tree giveaway and then a year where we won't, and it goes back and forth. You'll notice in 2021 we didn't do one. That was primarily a COVID situation, so that's why that year didn't happen. And the total budget of $28,500. Okay. Okay, and I've already gone through this table, so I won't do that again. I mostly just wanted to give the council an opportunity to provide any feedback, additional information they would like on the budget as a whole or as it relates to this presentation. I'll leave it to you if you have any questions or feedback.
I just say it's great work. I think the layout and the formats and the additional graphics that you're provide great additional information. It's a great improvement, and it's excellent work.
Thank you.
Midvale's still crying about their loss. Okay. Oh my gosh. Is that the end of the agenda?
No.
No? Oh, that's right. We have to go back to A and B. Okay, not A.
Not A.
We've got B, C, and D. Okay. All right. Yes, the discussion on public hearings. First one being the rezone. So that was interesting. We had a number of mixed comments online, but only in favor here. And I think and Emily, you looked at those probably in more detail than I did. Although I did look at those. A lot of their concerns had to do with the traffic patterns relative to the luge run.
Mm-hmm.
But to me, it's this project that solves the luge run. And if not for the project, the luge would have to remain.
Yes.
And that additional traffic that they're more concerned about with the apartment building would shoot through that luge along with and create a problem for those people exiting into the luge. But now this project seems to solve a lot of problems, both for 6060 South as well as for the Diamond Peak complex.
Yeah, I really appreciate Carrie and Jared and John's help with this because I was anticipating a lot more people concerned given the nature of the written comments. So I tried to preempt a lot of those with my questions. But I agree with you. It also seems like if we're able to kind of close down that luge run, a lot of the traffic that they're worried about from that apartment building won't be affecting that neighborhood quite as directly.
Not at all.
Yeah, so I think that I really think that, and I hope we were able to communicate that I really think that this, rather than increasing problems, will actually dramatically help
solve
all of the concerns that they have in that neighborhood. So.
Yeah, I would expect actually, given the change in that, and in fact, John or Jared, at what point should we start considering not even talking about construction yet in terms of changing, but just putting putting Jersey barricades there to start changing the traffic pattern as soon as those residences are no longer occupied? Is that something we can start considering regardless of when construction happens?
I think that's a good consideration, especially when you start looking at a new traffic study of what that is intended to do. Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
I would absolutely support
I
that.
think we could expedite changing the traffic pattern once those houses are emptied and that requirement is changed.
Yeah.
We can start getting people used to that traffic pattern change, and so
The sooner the better, especially if you have all those people moving into those apartments, so they just get used to the new traffic pattern right away as they're moving, and I think that just eases the transition.
I think that also will change people even using that, even though it's still a luge, but now with a left turn and a right turn.
Yeah.
They might not even use that at all. They just go down Van Winkle to Highland and make the right turn there.
Yeah.
If there's more sort of clogged up traffic there from the apartment traffic. In fact, we could even think about, an elevated sidewalk right there within the south part of what is currently the luge.
Yeah.
To discourage traffic from going that way if their intent is to go along Highland Drive.
Yeah.
But the first step would just be the Jersey barricades, essentially, to cut off that once they're no longer needed.
Mayor, one thing I want to make clarification on. There was a slide in your presentation that showed what could quote unquote be a park. I just want to ensure that that's separate from what this rezone consideration.
Yeah, that's an idea. We're not approving a park there. We're only talking about rezoning. But the opportunity is that, and I didn't want to get into a back and forth with public comment when he was starting to ask about our commitment. But I mean, that's the great trade-off in my view, is the opportunity to close the luge, at least in terms of its straight shot, and diverting to that that element by the gas station, adjacent to the gas station.
Yep.
Which changes the whole speed demon track element there. So, given that, I mean, the other element that I appreciated in Carrie's report was how we make a more consistent drawdown in density from a relatively higher with the apartment complex to RM to R2, which is the kind of transition we want, and also given that those are residential units, although there are a number of folks who think, oh, traffic. Yes, it does add some, but relative to commercial, if that were developed commercial with a doctor's office or dentist's office or even retail, where you think of the number of cars that come in and out of a single parking space in a commercial, creating those trips relative to someone just parking their car in their own driveway, the trip count is so much smaller with residential than with commercial that it really is minimal in terms of trip count. We do add, some, you can arguably call it some missing middle. I mean, it's higher middle perhaps, but it's Holladay still. But that sort of townhome. I mean, our big inventory is certainly a single family quarter acre. Is that a correct assessment? So to have some additional RM that kind of fits the Holladay vibe, particularly for that side of town, I think it's a worthwhile project that fits in thematically with Holladay Crossroads. I mean, I wouldn't put this project further north on Highland Drive, right in the middle of, by Pheasant Lane or something.
Yeah, no.
That context doesn't make sense. But in this context, next to Holladay Crossroads and the existing PUD, I think this is a no-brainer.
Yep, I agree with all of that.
Same.
Okay, well, we'll have an opportunity to vote on that next week and change your mind in the meantime if you want, but sounds like we're going in a positive direction without too much controversy there. Okay, the next one's on any comments on the budget amendments for this year or budget for next year. I know there's certainly some additional changes we can make in the coming year. I think as we all know, our number one complaint in the city is speeding, and then we have an elevated um, number of calls and issues coming out. I think about the e-bikes and those sorts of things. But I think we there's always an opportunity to identify spaces for like the flashing speed signs if we're having specific problems somewhere. Um, there's also the opportunity to look at. I'd like to look at if there's something either public education or enforcement wise to start addressing the e-bike enforcement issue. I got another voicemail today that someone was getting run over practically by a horde of 8 to 12-year-olds on e-bikes in the plaza area. So perhaps we can start thinking about that. Okay. So what were the other ones? Here we go. Compensation schedule. Any questions on that? Anybody looking for a market rate change? Everybody okay? And the fee schedule. Did we end up having any? Do we feel comfortable with the fee schedule?
Yeah, have we heard back from, I know we sent out things to the businesses letting them know. Have we gotten feedback?
So, given the delay in implementation until January 1st, we decided to delay the communication as well. So, that will probably happen after the 1st of July, and we'll have a better idea after that.
Okay.
And nothing's engraved in stone because we can always make a fee schedule change again if there's significant blowback. But yeah. Okay. That's the public hearings. Before we move on to C, any last comments about any of the public hearings? Okay. All right. Let's move on to the employee manual changes. I think this is pretty brief too.
It is. It's so brief, I'm going to stay right here. There are three changes in the employee manual that we're proposing. The first is just some cleanup. We had a discrepancy between our financial system, our time reporting system, and what was in our employee manual. So we're just clarifying the categories for leave accumulation. Less than 5 years of service, employees receive 96 hours or 12 days time off vacation with pay. And then 5 years plus, 5 to 10 is 15 days off. Once they reach 10 years of service, 18 days. 15 years of service moves to 21 days, and 20 or more years of service, 24 days of vacation leave off with pay. The second change is just clarifying, hopefully once and for all, a conversation we never have to have again. Juneteenth is June 19th. That's it. The third change is moving from a concept that um, we had really liked in the 2020 timeframe when we adopted this employee manual, and that was to create retirement health savings accounts for employees with large sick leave banks. So I think right now we have 11 employees in that category. Um, with the pandemic and a number of changes that took place around that time, we never actually created those retirement health savings accounts. So Christian earlier this year started the process. He submitted a budget amendment in the early part of this year to make that conversion. And we were very close to executing on that plan, and then realized that the fees charged for those accounts were pretty astronomical because our pool is so small. After doing a little more research, we realized that any provider was going to cost, it was just going to cost a lot in fees. So we're moving to a different plan, and that is converting that sick leave, doing a one-time conversion with a payment instead of to a retirement health savings account to the employees' 401k or 457 plans. We'll do that one time and then have a max sick leave accumulation at 180 hours. And then a separation incentive for employees of, I think, a 10% payout for anything. Is that, and Christian, help me here, is it for their total hours at, thank you.
I'd have to review the direct policy because I think we changed it a couple times, but I believe the final where we landed was every year employees who were over 180 hours would be taken back to 180. But if they were taken back to 180 and then theoretically didn't take any sick time throughout the year, they could be at 180 plus 96 hours. And say they were to terminate on the last day of the year after that accumulation, it could be 180 plus 96 would be the maximum someone could theoretically get.
10% of that.
10%.
So I think this will be a one-time fix for the most part, and you have already approved the budget amendment for that. We're just changing where the money ends up.
Yeah, and the problem we're having is we had those massive pools of unused sick leave, which didn't ever get reset or paid out. They just grew into the monster liability.
Right.
Yeah. So there were those employees, long-standing employees who just over time have accumulated massive balances. This one time would take everyone back down to 180, and then after that, everyone could get the maximum payout of 10% of 180 plus whatever they accumulate in the given year.
Okay.
Sounds good.
So if everyone is okay with that, we'll have that manual updated and prepared for your approval.
Okay.
Sweet.
And
Yep.
if you have any questions beyond today, reach out to staff to get clarification or if you need. Okay. Sidewalk management policy.
Yeah, so you'll remember in Christian's changes from the tentative budget, it included some changes in our insurance rates. And that includes our general liability policy. We have received guidance from our insurer that it would be a great idea for our governing body to adopt a sidewalk management policy that over time, we've had a number of claims that have involved hazards on sidewalks. And Todd, you might want to speak briefly to maybe the change in case law from the way those were viewed in the past to the way they're viewed now.
Yeah, there's a little less leeway for cities and their maintenance programs with sidewalks, and a little more corresponding liability is what looks like coming out of the courts right now. And so I think that has put everybody's insurer on alarm to some extent, and this is, I think, the natural reaction to what we've seen from the courts over the last about 6 or 7 years.
And is this specific when you have specifically built sidewalks versus the country roads that don't and you have a pothole, or is it just any hazard on a city asset, or is this sidewalk construction specific?
I think the cases have been focused more on sidewalks, but it is really easy for me to see how that could extend to the maintenance of any kind of a public way.
I guess what I wondered is if this is something that's going to result in less sidewalks being constructed because there's more liability on that type of pedestrian walkway versus not sidewalked.
I guess that's possible, but I kind of doubt it.
I would doubt it too, and I will say we have had claims on areas, pedestrian safety claims on areas where there are not sidewalks in our
Right.
city as well.
Right.
Does the adoption of a plan suggest increased obligations by the city to build sidewalks, or?
It does not. It does suggest some increased obligation on our part for maintenance. So this policy defines some priorities and those priorities include the village, schools, and transit stops and parks is kind of our first level priority where we're inspecting more frequently. Um, and then residential areas, we would inspect on every 2 or 3 years. Areas that are residential but where there aren't sidewalks, we would inspect every 3 to 5 years. Um, the first thing that we will need to do is kind of a complete inventory. So the budget right now contains some money. And we have, I think, a $35,000 increase in public services to do that type of inventory and then do some repair work of our priority one problem areas that are identified as part of that inventory. And then we'll set up a yearly rotation. Right now we have $100,000 in the budget that's before you to make those repairs. Without having a complete inventory, we're not sure whether that's enough or is it too much. Once we do an inventory and kind of get this process rolling, we'll have a better idea of what we'll need on an ongoing basis.
And does an outside entity do that inspection, or is it our own in-house public works?
And we're still working through that. There are outside entities that would do it on our behalf. We may hire someone to do it on a temporary basis. I think Jared's still looking at options.
So we have a sidewalk quality index in addition to the pavement quality index.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
All right.
Any questions? Concerns? Changes to the sidewalk policy? Okay. Are we out? Are we done? Is that it? Have I missed anything? No closed session. So I guess that just leaves.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you.